Well, I can put it at the table. Well, that's still I'm gonna. One, two, one.
Okay, good deal, thank you. So that's fine, as long as y'all got it done, then it's about time.
Call the meeting to order for the Washington County Foreign Courts Finance and Budget Committee. Welcome everybody to our meeting tonight. Our prayer and pledge tonight will be led by Eva Madison.
I have invited Pastor Clint Schneckloff from Good Shepherd Lutheran Church to lead us. Not only is Pastor Clint a resident of District 9, but his church is also located in District 9. So he is on with us, and I would ask him to lead us in prayer.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Is that correct? Okay, great. Well, let us pray. Pray for those who are hungry. Pray harder for those who will not feed them. Pray for those who struggle each week to pay their bills. Pray harder for the wealthy who do not care. Pray for those who are homeless. Pray harder for those who deny them shelter. Pray for the sick and lonely. Pray harder for those who will not give them comfort. Pray for those who cry out for dignity. Pray harder for those who will not listen. Pray for those oppressed by unjust wages. Pray harder for those who exploit them. Pray for those who bear the yoke of prejudice. Pray harder for those who discriminate against them. Pray for those who write budgets and plan government expenditures. Pray harder for those who misuse such budgets for secrets and injustice. Pray for those whose basic needs are denied. Pray harder for public officials who cater to the greedy and ignore those bound unjustly. Honoring the many faiths represented in our community, Buddhist, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, or no faith at all, we lift these intentions each according to our own way. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Clint. Now if you'll join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Patty, will you please call the roll?
Susan Cunningham,
Here.
Patrick Deacons,
Here.
Sam Duncan,
Here.
Lisa Ecke,
Here.
Ann Harbison,
Here.
Suki Hires,
Here.
Andrea Jenkins,
I'm here.
Lance Johnson,
Here.
Willie Lemming,
Present.
Eva Madison,
Here.
Sue Madison,
Here.
Butch Pond,
Here.
Derek Thomas, Chandra Washington,
Here.
Judith Yanez. JP Harbison, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We need to add an item to the agenda from the library. Do I hear a motion to add this ordinance to the agenda as 13B?
A motion to add the library to the agenda 13B.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right,
I move adoption of the agenda as amended.
I'd like to add one thing,
okay.
if we can.
So, wait a minute. We need to adopt the agenda.
I move adoption of the agenda as amended.
Okay.
Second.
Willie Fleming.
I would like to have a report from somebody on Johnson Controls, where we're at and how that thing's coming. Haven't heard any information about that since it started. How can we get that?
Okay, request it and have it, I guess, put on the service agenda.
Okay.
Call the county judge's office.
Okay.
Okay. Second motion. I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Agenda passed. All right. We now have Bobby Hill with our monthly treasurer's report. Bobby?
Okay, I'm here. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, hello, everybody. Look at 4.1, the treasurer summary. Everything's about like it should be this time of year. If you look at the general fund, the end balance, 11 million, just a little over 11 million. If you look back 1 year to September 30th, 2019, that same amount was 8,500,000. So as we begin the final quarter of the year, we're in a much better starting point than we were in 2019. If you look at the bottom of the next page, we ended September with 35.5 million in the bank. 4.2 is the property taxes received in the county general fund. You see in September, we got 483,000. And so far for the year, we're 1.65% over 2019. 4.3, 1 cent sales tax. September, so this is July collections. They were just under 11% up from this time last year, 754,000. For the year, that's 7.2% up, 422,000 total. It remains to be seen the last 3 months because we have a lot of fairs and festivals, Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue, and all that's canceled. Low attendance at Razorback games because they're not letting many people in. So I don't look for those robust figures to continue the next 3 months, but hopefully it will be up a little. 4.4, the jail tax, a little over $1 million came in. Almost 100,000 more than last year, and we're already close to 600,000 more than this same period last year. 4.5, just different distributions of the sales tax. The merchandise stores and grocery stores, those seem to be leveling out some. The building materials, sporting goods, e-shopping are up good, and the last one, that other miscellaneous store retailers, you see 157% increase. That is the medical marijuana item. That's where they put that. So, and this time last year we didn't have the dispensaries, so that's new for this month. Let's see, 4.6, the road tax. It didn't fare as well. It was down just under, well, about 1/4%. 154,000 came in. For the year, we're up 1.45%. And this is that 10-year tax that's on the ballot to be extended permanently. And finally, 4.7, this is the first month of the 1/4 cent radio system that goes for 1 year. And they have a good start for their purposes. A little over $1 million. And that's all I have. Anybody got any questions?
All right, questions for Bobby? I see no questions. Thank you, Bobby. We appreciate, the good news, and hopefully, that will continue. All right, we're ready to move on to our employees' insurance report. Nelson Driver, are you on?
Hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I've got some semi-good news for the group. If you will take a look at the spreadsheet in front of you, we gained a little over $230,000 into the health fund in the month of September. The reason I brought up semi-good news is we're entering the last quarter of this calendar year, and this is typically when we have a pretty steep increase in claims filed with the health fund. This is typically due to the individuals getting their last items of healthcare, surgical situations, treatments taken care of while they have met their calendar year deductible before they enter into a new deductible year beginning January 1. I think, excuse me, I think we're sitting in good shape right now as far as the overall balance of the fund, but I would ask you to proceed with caution there. Depending on what happens with the bids that we have, we've got RFPs out right now for the TPA services as well as the group life insurance and dental insurance. Depending on what happens with our excess loss insurance premium, which we're expecting an increase, is going to determine what we deem to be necessary as far as funding is concerned beginning in January of 2021. I think we're still looking at a possibility of an increase on the employee side and the dependent side, somewhere in the range of 5 to 7%. We're about 2 weeks away from getting the RFPs in, and I'll be able to give you a much better report on where we stand by the end of October. And that's all I've got.
Mr. Driver, did I understand that, we're gonna look at increasing the employees from 5 to 7% to meet this increase in this, bid that's out?
That is my preliminary projection, JP Harbison, is to see, you know, what occurs with our increases in claims processing and the third-party administration that manages our claims and our funding.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Driver? All right.
Eva Madison has a question.
JP Eva Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nelson, I was curious if you have any idea, I know it's an estimate at this point, of what that might be per paycheck so that we can factor that into our discussion about employee raises. You said 5 to 7%, but.
JP Madison, I think that as far as a per pay period increase, you're probably looking somewhere, and this is ballpark, you know, please understand this is just ballpark. You're looking probably in the range of $15 to $20 per pay period on the dependent side.
Okay.
It's not going to be an astronomical jump.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to put it into dollars since we're talking about raises later on the agenda.
Sure.
Thanks.
You bet.
Are there any other questions? Okay, JP Ecke.
Thank you. Mr. Driver, is there any way to keep the bids flat without having a 2% going from 5 to 7% increase? If there's any
you were breaking up a little bit, JP Ecke. Could you restate that, please?
Is there any way to keep the bids flat rather than looking at a 2 to 5% increase?
Okay,
overall?
you're talking about keeping the premiums flat with no increase? during the last quarter. If we see a sharp increase, in claims coming in, increasing the claims cost to the fund, and if we see a sharp increase once the RFPs are completed, we see a sharp increase in our excess of loss insurance and the actual claims management by our third-party administrators. I don't see that there would be a way to beginning to deplete the sum that's in our health fund.
Okay, with that being said, is there a goal, a target that we can just say, you know, this is what our target number is to keep things down in order to keep the premiums flat or where they are?
Our target goal, as far as the health fund has been concerned, is always to keep a balance in there between $3.2 and $3.5 million as a static balance, just to protect the solvency of the fund. The situation that you get into is the entire governing body, from the county judge to the quorum court. You've got a real high fiduciary responsibility to maintain solvency in that fund. And the situation that we do not want to get into is get the balance of the fund into a situation where 5 or 6 major hits to the fund would get us in trouble from a solvency standpoint. Our excess of loss, our safety net, if you will, our excess of loss does not kick in until we have a claim that exceeds $175,000 on any one given claim. Now you factor that into where, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I think right now we're sitting somewhere counting dependents with about 1,000 or 1,005 individuals covered under the county's health plan.
Could you repeat that static number? Was it 3.2 or 3.5 or 5.2? I didn't hear you quite well.
I'm sorry. It was, the balance needs to be maintained at a minimum of 3.2 million to 3.5 million. And that range is a minimum.
Okay, and right now we have a current balance?
3.264 million is where we're sitting right now.
Are you finished?
Yes. Thank you.
Let me ask you this question, Mr. Driver. How much would the county have to put in, and the employees not put any in, to maintain the fund's sovereignty?
JP Harbison, I don't have that number in front of me, but I think that you would be looking probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $25 per position. The county funds the health fund on a per position basis, not on a per individual hired. If you've got X positions, you put money in for the total positions that are in the budget, not for how many people are sitting in those positions. So if you've got 30 positions that are not filled, the county is still funding those 30 positions as far as the health fund.
No, I understand that. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Driver. We appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we're now ready to move on to our Comptroller's report. Shannon Logan.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at summary of operation expenses by fund and department. For 3 September, if all expenses are linear, we should be at about 75%. And you go forward to page 13. For all of general fund, we're 68.3% of actual spending. And then the for all the special revenue funds. If you skip over to page 18, the total for all the funds and departments is 75%. So overall, we're in pretty good shape on our spending. Then 6.2 is the unappropriated reserve balance report. And you can see there that just 2 ordinances affected the reserve balances. And we ended up with $5,958,534 in general. That's the jail. That's the jail deficit for a net general fund of $5,041,829,000. And that's all I had.
All right, do we have any questions for Mr. Worthing? Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you for your report. All right. We are ready to start with unfinished business. Item 7, having to do with the juvenile caseworker. This was postponed from our last meeting. I see our director here. Would she like to speak to this?
I would defer to the White.
Oh, okay. Well, Mr. Watson, would you like to speak to it?
After last month's meeting, I took the liberty of trying to give some clarity and context to that agenda item, and I sent it out to the court. I take everyone's had an opportunity to read it, and I hope that it's self-evident in that the necessity both for the change and the validity of it.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay.
JP Eva Madison has a question.
JP Eva Madison's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was curious, I don't think I still know the budget impact. I know that it's not going to impact this year, but what is the cost of this?
For next year, the implication would be $41,500.
Did you hear him? He said 41,500.
Yeah, it is a little hard to hear tonight for some reason. I'm not sure what it is, but yeah, 41.5 thousand.
Yes.
Okay.
But that's before FICA and APRS, so it might push its way to 50.
No, I'm sure it will. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
All right, are there any other questions?
It is in the 2021 budget, though.
No, because I didn't feel comfortable in having the director put that in the budget without it being approved by the court here.
Okay, so this is going to be additional dollars added to the
It would
budget.
be.
Okay,
2.8% more.
point of clarity. Thank you.
Yes.
Are there any other questions or discussion?
I have a motion to pass.
Have a motion to pass. Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, JP Pond seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion? JP Lenny.
I would just like to see this put in the budget for 2021. I don't understand why we're waiting until 2 months before the end of the year to get it into, but I just think this needs to be in the budget for next year.
As I said, I presented it in September, hoping that it would be approved, and that way we could probably have made it as a submission.
Yeah.
There was a regrade, and because of that, that has to come to committee before. So,
thank you.
All right, JP Deakins.
I flipped over to the juvenile detention center budget. Comparing 2020 to 2021, we had a budgeted dip in salaries, correct? And so, can you walk me through that, why we had the dip, and now we're gonna, what was the dip that's associated with, do you know? Off the top of your head?
Primarily unfilled slots.
Okay. So, bottom line, when I'm looking at the budget proposed compared to last year, you were asking essentially for $73,000 less. We think these raises could be fully absorbed by that savings. That's what you're saying. I mean, we have to factor in APRS and.
That's correct.
And this, I would like to know if you think it would fall underneath that $73,000 savings.
I would hope it is. I can't be definitive about it. The only thing is that after the first sweep, when they took 99 grand, and then the subsequent sweep, which are expecting 34, they were well within it, as I showed in that spreadsheet. However, the thing is that with them running chronic shortages, from 2 to 4, as I articulated in that email, my expectation would be, hopefully, they would be able to do it. But if they were to fill those vacancies as a worst-case scenario, they would need 51,000.
Before.
In the budget, just to make sure, yes.
Before adding the benefits on top of it.
Yes. No, that's including the benefit.
Okay.
Yes. It's 43.5 without the FICA and the APRS.
And I know JP Madison alluded to it, but why does this not affect the 2020 budget? Because of the sweep?
Because it has, as I said before, those unfilled positions, you constantly had a cushion there.
Yeah.
And even with the sweeps, we made sure in consultation with the director that they had enough to accommodate it. They have more than enough to accommodate. They would still have, by my figuring, they would still have roughly 28,000 available. And as the changes in the salary would cost 10 grand between now and the end of the year, which would be internally funded.
Yeah. Two things that I want to make sure the court knows about. One is I appreciate your advocacy for this. I'd like to see the director advocate a little bit more in front of the court. That would help me out spend this money. And two, the sweep was made to help us as a county overall. It wasn't a savings for the departments to go back in and dip into regularly. That was in my mind what it was used for. So, I appreciate the savings there, but I don't really know that sells me on the fact that that money can be turned around and used again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Ms. Patty?
Public comment?
What?
Public comment.
Public comment. Do we have any public comment? Seeing or hearing none, then Ms. Patty, will you please call the roll for this ordinance?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes?
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
No.
Andrea Jenkins,
No.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Sue Madison,
No.
Willie Lemming,
No.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
have 8 votes for and 4 against.
Okay, the ordinance is passed on to the Quorum Court. All right, we are now ready for item 8. JP Butch Pond.
Yes, Brian, could you read the title, I guess?
Yeah, this is an ordinance changing the title of veterinarian technician / patient transport coordinator to kennel supervisor in the animal shelter budget for 2020.
Another one of those title changes. this will have to go before finance and budget.
This is finance and budget,
So it's got to come before this.
yeah.
To know if there are any questions.
J.P. Jenkins.
Okay. J.P. Jenkins?
I was wondering if the if the director of the animal shelter is here to speak on this?
She is not.
I'll ask Mr. Watson to fill us in on this.
J.P. Jenkins, this position, the vet tech patient transport coordinator, has been vacant for an extended period of time. I think I'm aware of the fact that the director outlined that the various kennel supervisors do the transport on an ad hoc basis. And so the thing is that rather than maintain, she would need the portability of more than an additional kennel supervisor to ensure the smooth running of the operation. Because of the fact that it's the same grade, there would be no funding implication because the slot's already funded in her budget. But it's a wasted slot, and she obviously needs an additional supervisor to do this role.
All right. J.P. Eckes?
Is the grade gonna change?
Negative. It's 14 to 14.
It's 14 to 14, so kennel supervisor is the same as the veterinarian technician.
It's crazy.
So all of the qualifications for a kennel supervisor are the same qualifications for a veterinarian technician?
No, it doesn't work like that. It's just that the weighting of what the roles and tasks required of the individual positions are equal.
Responsibilities are different,
but the
but
grades
they
are.
have, they both grade 14.
That's correct.
Okay, any further questions?
J.P. Eva Madison.
J.P. Eva Madison, recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Watson. My original question was that it was cost neutral, but it occurred to me, my understanding is that we no longer have a vet who's a full-time vet for the shelter. And I thought the vet tech was at least able to provide some minimal services. Are we therefore no longer going to be able to do any veterinary services at the animal shelter? We'll have to outsource it all?
I can't answer that, J.P. Madison. I'd have to confer with the director.
Well, thank you for trying. I think it would be helpful if the directors of these departments were the ones speaking, like J.P. Deakins referenced in the change about JDC, because I think I don't have a problem with the change if it's necessary. There's no financial cost, but it does concern me about the shelter's ability to perform vet services. Because I was supportive of having a full-time vet on staff there, and we terminated that person. And I think it probably costs us more outsourced, but a vet tech could at least do shots and things. So I'd sure like more information on that. Thank you.
All right, do I have anyone else who would like to speak? Do I have a motion on this?
I'll move to pass.
All right, I have a motion to pass. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second. J.P. Johnson, second. Public comment. Do I have any public comment? All right.
Sarah Moore would like to speak.
Okay, Sarah Moore, you may speak.
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I guess I'm a person as a community member in Washington County that actually has gone and enjoyed the services of Washington County Animal Shelter. And the last time I adopted one of my pets from there, Baco, black and white tuxedo cat, which is a loving member of our family now, we were able to be provided the services by a vet who actually, I believe, did his fixing before we actually took him home. I think that's a really great service. And so I guess I'm not sure exactly with looking at this position. I'm very concerned if those services aren't being offered before the animal goes home with the individual. We do have an issue in our county where we do have feral, populations of animals, and folks don't do the responsible things as pet owners to have their pets spayed and neutered. And that is a problem, both a health problem within our county when that happens and a fiscal problem because somebody has to take care of that. And so I would really, I would hope that our quorum court actually would have a more robust conversation around what the services are at the animal shelter and what services are able to be provided there for those animals that people in the county go to add to their families. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, okay, we're on public comment now, so.
Just a point of information of what services they are providing.
Okay, parliamentary.
I'm sorry,
Just point of clarification or information that the animal shelter does provide spade and neutering for the animals. So they do provide that service.
But
to my
it's
knowledge, they do.
outsourced.
Do what?
It is outsourced per the quorum court, but it is a service that is being offered
Yes,
through the animal shelter. So we are providing that.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, JP, okay,
Jenkins.
Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious how we provide that service without a vet tech.
It is outsourced.
We just don't have a full-time vet
It's
there.
outsourced.
Is it all, is it outsourced or, I mean, I have so many questions. I wish the director was here.
Yes, it is outsourced.
Thank you. Is there any other comment? JP Pond.
Just a reminder, this is a budget and finance committee meeting. This is not the county services committee, and all this discussion of whether we're still spaying and neutering and whether we have somebody down there labeled a vet tech as opposed to another assistant. It's just a different title change. We're talking about some stuff that is not under our bailiwick. It's to the discretion of the county judge.
Okay,
Thank you.
let's move on. Thank you for getting us back on track, JP Pond. Is there any other okay, to do with the budget part of this, is there any other comments? All right, JP Lemming.
Call the question. Let's get her done.
Well, JP, Miss Patty, please call the roll.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
No.
Andrea Jenkins,
No.
Suki Hires,
No.
Sue Madison,
No.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
have 8 for and 4 against.
Okay, this moves on to the quorum court. All right, we are ready for item nine, JP Pond.
County Attorney Lester, would you address this by title, please?
Yeah, this is an ordinance changing the title of the janitorial person to janitorial trainer / floor technician in the Buildings and Grounds budget for 2020.
All right,
We have questions on the 9.1.
do I have a motion?
Motion.
All right, I have a motion to pass. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. JP Deacons.
What's the dollar impact of this? Am I missing it?
They would internally fund, it would be $590 for the rest of the year. And it would be, it would need $2,600 for all of next year. It goes from a grade 6 to a grade 12.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
JP Sue Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a comment. This seems like an odd combination of a job to me, a janitorial trainer / floor technician. And it makes me wonder if we have someone uniquely qualified already lined up. And I don't like to do business that way, and I trust that that is not the case. That's all I have to say.
We're only changing the title here, so I'm not sure, we're hiring a new person. All right,
You want me to speak to that?
yes, please.
Dwight's on.
No, it's not.
No, the director, JP Harbison, Dwight Gonzalez, the Buildings and Grounds Director, is available if you'd like to hear from him.
Oh, okay. Dwight, you're recognized.
I guess he's having technical difficulties.
Okay, you want to go on and explain?
JP Madison and the court. The background to this essentially is that the title may be a little bit of a tongue twister, but the role has been performed by the senior janitorial person for an extended period of time. And as I said before, when it was originally meant to be brought, was that the director was reluctant to put it into next year's budget until it was approved, as I had explained to JP Lemming earlier about the other position. The reason it's described as it is that this person trains all new contractors or permanent employees that come to join the janitorial staff. When the foreman has to go to another physical proximity, this person manages and schedules the work that has to occur. So that was really the context and history behind the title.
I'm here now. You can hear me.
Isn't this,
Just a minute, okay, great. Eki. Okay, JP Eki, you're recognized.
at the bottom of this letter of justification, doesn't he say by combining the floor technician with the supervisor position, the county can save funds with one position rather than having two separate positions? That to me is justifiable in asking this, and I will support it. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right.
Yes, Watson did a good enough job explaining the reason why and the justification. This saves us funds. As far as having a floor technician, it saves us funds from having to contract out these services, as well as extend the life of the flooring that we currently have, and being able to do it in-house, as well as having a dedicated person that can set a training protocol that is standardized throughout all the buildings, so that if we do have a vacancy in one building, someone can immediately go over to another building without having to learn a new protocol. And that was the purpose of combining the two together.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments, public comment? Seeing none, Ms. Patty, would you please call the roll?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes?
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Shonda Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
No.
Andrea Jenkins. Nope. Suki Hires,
Yes.
Sue Madison,
No.
Willie Lemming,
No.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Deacons.
Yes.
Have 8 for and 4 against.
All right, and this will be sent on to, the foreign court. All right, we're on, number 10, Butch Pond.
Attorney Lester.
This is an ordinance changing the title of social worker in the Circuit Court 3 budget to juvenile probation officer in the Circuit Court 3 budget for 2020.
Okay, you had read the, material with this. It was a position that could not be filled, a social worker, and they, needed a probation officer. So Judge Zimmerman is asking for that to be changed to a probation officer. Is there any discussion? Okay, JP Jenkins.
Hi, thanks. I just have a couple of things. First, is Zimmerman available for questions or anyone from JDC?
She's in
No,
quarantine.
She's in court. She's recovering, she's rehabilitating from an illness, so no, she's not.
Okay, well, maybe someone else can answer. I have a question and then a statement. How many social workers are on staff at JDC right now?
They have one slot.
So that one slot is the one that's wanting to be replaced according to this ordinance?
That is correct.
Okay, well, I saw, I was doing some research on this, and they had a social work intervention program going on in 2019 that they were very proud of. And according to a report, 70% of kids who are detained suffer from a mental illness or mental disorders. And part of the reason why you have social workers in the program like that is to help reduce the recidivism of these children. And I feel like, man, if we don't need to get rid of social workers from a situation where youth are being detained for crime that they have a mental illness a lot of times when they are committing these crimes. I'm worried that, I don't think that we need to take social work out of this system. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
If I may respond to that, JP Jenkins, the situation at the juvenile court, they have vigorously tried to recruit for that vacancy. The unfortunate truth is that at the wage that they are able to afford and the licensing and technical requirements of the person to perform the job, the two have never met. And so because of that extended absence and because of the requirement for operational requirements, that's why I believe that Judge Zimmerman is wanting to change that position.
If I may, Madam Chair, if I may, then maybe that's something, an issue that needs to be addressed, and maybe some kind of budgetary re-proposals or.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. They're very appropriate. All right, JP Pond.
I have a question that you may be able to answer, Mr. Watson, in order to clarify the broader picture of the JDC, which the juvenile court works very closely with. How many social workers do they have at this time, JDC?
They have a white social worker and they have another one.
So they have two. Our juvenile justice system is not without social workers. I'm actually pro with social workers myself. I see the need for them, and I completely understand the concerns if we had a picture where we did not have access, or our juveniles had no access to social workers. I just wanted to make sure that the court realizes that that is not the case. Thank you.
And just for the sake of clarity, JP Jenkins, Judge Zimmerman only runs that one half, whereas the JDC on the other side, which currently has the 2 social workers, falls under the judge's portfolio.
Judge Woods, not Judge Zimmerman. Okay, I just wanted to
I want my
make sure
judge to
we're
do
talking
it.
about the correct judge here. Okay, do we have a motion on this item?
Motion to pass.
Okay.
10.1.
Who made the motion? Did you make the motion?
I don't know if we made any or not.
No, I think it
We've
was
discussed so
on
long.
the previous.
I could have hit Easter egg and not remember where
Miss
they
Patty, do
are.
we have a motion?
I do not have.
Well, and that we passed.
You do not have one. I didn't think we have, okay. Lisa Ecke makes a motion to pass, 10.1. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, J.P. Lemming seconds the motion. All right.
Public comment?
Who?
Sarah Moore?
All right, public comment, Sarah Moore.
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville. I have a lot of concerns, and I'm very thankful what Andrea brought up. We have just undergone on the adult side the criminal justice assessment, and it definitely spoke to areas that we needed to look into having more robust pretrial services, as well as reentry services and things like social workers. A lot of times, Judge Zimmerman has really bragged about the program she has in place on the juvenile side, and we wanted to echo and put those things in place on the adult side. And so I have a lot of concerns if we're talking about there have been hurdles with hiring. I talked to the School of Social Work here at the university. They're very interested in partnering. I think that we could probably work to see what those hurdles are and work through that. But I think at the end of the day, the school to prison pipeline is very real. The city of Fayetteville, the Fayetteville School District, actually arrested quite a number of students, on campus, and there was a talk of the disparate number of kids of color that were arrested. And so I will tell you, just like what Andrea said in some of those statistics, the things that folks are dealing with, the trauma in their homes, a probation officer is an officer of the law. They're there for enforcement. They're seen as a certain way. They might be a friend or a confidant, but a social worker truly has the skills to talk to a developing mind and to understand neurologically how a child is dealing with different trauma. And so I would very much discourage the court at this time, maybe hold on to this and table it and look at how we can talk with Judge Zimmerman to potentially restructure something so that she can get the needs met that she has. Because I know she would welcome probably having additional conversation when she's feeling better. Thank you.
Okay, we're on public comment. Do we have any more public comment?
David Freeman.
David Freeman.
Hi, this is David Freeman. I'm from Fayetteville as well. And what Sarah said really spoke to me. Also echoing what JP Jenkins mentioned, I really hope that we take every step that we can to move towards a justice system that's actually about healing and restoration rather than about punishment or like some sort of like, you can't solve a problem going on in somebody's life by like putting the person aside. The way that you solve the problem is actually by addressing what the problem is. And in all crime, there's an underlying problem going on. And I hope that we as a county take every step that we can to create a system that actually addresses those underlying problems rather than just addressing the people who are making decisions that spawn from those problems. Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? All right, seeing none, Ms. Patty, will you call the roll, please?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
No.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins,
No.
Suki Hires,
No.
Sue Madison,
No.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Dickens,
Yes.
Have 8 for and 4 against.
All right, this moves on to the foreign court. All right, we're ready for ordinance number 11.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
Sue Madison has her hand raised.
11.
Please share the motion.
You're recognized.
thank you, Madam Chair. I just need to point out that most of the discussions we've had about these positions have been personnel issues. Finance is to deal with the money part of this. I don't know why we didn't have a personnel meeting and address these questions in personnel. That's where they appropriately.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to 11. We have an ordinance to establish a sub-fund of county general to be called the Coronavirus Relief Fund and to declare an emergency. All right, you want to speak to that?
Sure.
Brian?
So with the CARES Act funding that we're getting ready to apply for, the legislative audit requires that we set this fund up. And so this is just a fund that will allow legislative audit to keep track of exactly what money comes in from the CARES Act, from Arkansas portion of the CARES Act, that the county gets and where that money goes. And so this was a request of legislative audit in the AAC. And so that's all it is.
Move to pass 11-1.
All right, I have a pass and a second.
No discussion?
I'm just gonna ask a question when it
Okay,
comes time. Brian, this is basically just a checking account, we put our money in. Is it come through the, quorum court?
The money?
Yes.
The money will have to come through to be appropriated. So once the money comes in, for the money to be reappropriated back out to the fund for where the money was spent, the quorum court will have to appropriate the money, yes.
Well, I've seen that, we possibly could get like 4.7 million, is that correct?
4.5. yeah.
4.5 million. But basically, it's just a tracking device to keep up with the money, and it comes through the quorum court.
That's correct.
Okay, you can't spend it without the quorum court's approval.
It has to be appropriated, like anything has to be appropriated.
Second.
Okay. Who's
JP Jenkins?
JP Jenkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted a clarification at the bottom of Article 2. The last part of the last sentence says, I just want clarification. Approved expenditures made by the county due to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 is unrestricted county revenue and may be expended for any legal county expense. I just want clarification on what unrestricted county revenue amounts to and how it could be expended. Like what legal county expenses are we talking about? Would they be related to COVID? I mean, when it says made by the county, approved expenditures made by the county, does that mean coming through and approved through the quorum court? Or, I mean, I need some clarification.
All right.
Yeah, so what that's saying is that this money is not earmarked where, like a grant, let's say we have a grant, like in our DEM, where we get money that has to be spent a certain way within the DEM grant fund. These grant funds are reimbursement funds, but the county's not restricted on spending it only on certain things. The state has recognized that maybe the county spent some money on something here but didn't do a project that they would have done, and so that money can be used to do the project that was put on hold to have the money to have the whatever PPE or whatever might have happened. So it's unrestricted in the sense that it can be spent in any budget on any fund. Personnel, supplies, you name it, it can be spent however it's needed to be spent.
And will that, to continue to answer my question, will that come through the quorum court for approval?
The quorum court has to appropriate.
Has to appropriate money. So yes.
The approval for projects before the appropriate, so. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Public comment? Seeing none, Ms. Patty, will you please call the roll?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes?
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Shonda Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Sue Madison,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Deacons.
Yes.
All right, this will be sent on to Form Court. All right, we're ready for number 12. All right, an ordinance appropriating $38,800 from unappropriated reserves in the Circuit Court Automation Fund to the small equipment line item in the Circuit Court Automation budget for 2020. This is for the sound system in the new courtroom, and this is money in it's not out of the county general, it's out of automation funds.
Move to pass. Second.
All right. Did you get that, Patty? J.P. Lenny made the motion, it was seconded by Sam Duncan. Any discussion? Seeing none, public comment.
Hold on, JP. Hold on. A hard time.
Ms. Patty, will you please call the roll?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes?
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Shonda Washington,
No.
Eva Madison,
You're muted, Eva.
No.
Andrea Jenkins,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
No.
Sue Madison,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Deacons,
Yes.
have 9 for and 3 against.
All right, this ordinance will be sent on to the Forum Court. Okay, we're ready for number 13, and this is our quarterly sweep. An ordinance appropriating surplus amounts from full-time salaries for various departments and restoring those amounts to unappropriated reserves as required by the 2020 budget controls for the third quarter of 2020.
Motion to push the 13.
Okay, I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Are there any questions? I have public comment. Ms. Patty, will you please call the roll?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Shonda Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Sue Madison,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Deacons.
Yes.
All right, this will be sent on to the Forum Court for approval. All right, we've got number 13B, the library, as requested, an ordinance transferring $18,000 within various departments of the county library budget for 2020. Do I have a motion to pass?
So moved.
All right, do I have a second? Second. All right, Lisa Ecke seconded. All right, is there any comment on the court?
Can't raise my hand.
JP, Eva Madison.
All right, Eva Madison, you're recognized.
Sorry, I lost the raise hand button there for a minute. I just wanted to say what a great job our library does. Glenda Audrain is phenomenal as the leader of our libraries, and we don't get many library issues that come through because they have their own millage. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our great libraries. I feel sure that they are providing people during a pandemic a lot of entertainment. So thanks to them.
All right. Here. Okay, public comment. Did we have? Okay, public comment. Seeing none, Ms. Patty, would call the roll.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes?
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Shonda Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Sue Madison,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Reg Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Dickens,
Yes. Madam Chair.
passes.
All right. This ordinance passed and will be passed on to you for approval to the Quorum Court. J.P. Deacon?
Do we think it's possible that 13 and 13B on a consent agenda?
I would think so.
Can I make that motion, please?
All right.
Do what we can.
All right. All those in favor of putting 13 and 13B on the consent agenda for the Quorum Court, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Motion passed. All right, we're ready to start our budget review with Judge Hanson, our important person that knows all about budgets. Okay. And salaries.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Quorum Court. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and take you through the 2020 market study and anticipation for your plans for the 2021 budget for compensation for the employees. If you'll look at the second page, behind the cover page, you'll see we have the Arkansas Salary Adjustment World at Work study for 2019 and 2020. This is looking at actual percentages for pay adjustments for actual 2019, the mean and median at 3.0%, and then for 2020 timeframe, 2.9 and 3%. Historically, over the last several years, while the economy was in a good situation, we would see about a 3 to 3.2% overall on a national basis. So this is tracking just a little bit down from where we were over the previous few years, but it's consistent with what we've had over the last 10 years since the last recession. The next one is the 2020 Northwest Arkansas Regional Salary Adjustment. In this area, they have the NOARC study, which is a human resources sponsored study by the HR Managers Association. In the 2020 study, we had 50 organizations that participated in this study back in June timeframe, with results being published in July. You'll see under general increases for actual 2020, 3.27% and projection for 3.25% for 2021. So we're starting to see there a little bit of consistency on what was generally given in the 2020 timeframe and a projection for 2021. A little bit surprising based on the pandemic and what we've been seeing is kind of an on-hold reference when it comes to compensation. But from a general perspective, general increase perspective, the market looks like it's going to stay pretty consistent. From a COLA, cost of living adjustment, 2.83% 2020 and 2% for projection for 2021. That's starting to show, if you will, a little bit of the impact that the economy has based on the pandemic. And then from a merit, also we're seeing a decline, 3.16% actual for 2020 timeframe and a projection of 2.77% for merit in 2021. On the next page, we have the list of the participants for the NOARC study. I'd like to provide this because we want to give you a feel for both the public and private entities that are participating in the study. So we're getting a good mix of organizations that represent both the private sector and the public sector. So it's not weighted one way or the other. We're getting a good feel for the overall market. On the next slide, average pay comparisons. We've been doing this for the last several years so that we could look at average wages on a national, state, and regional perspective and how those compare to Washington County. On a national basis for 2019, this usually tracks 1 year behind the current year because the Department of Labor puts out this study, tracks it 1 year out or behind. $53,490 or $25.72 on a national basis. At the state level, $42,690, $20.52. On a regional basis, $47,600, $22.88. That represents the Northwest Arkansas regional market, which is the greater Bend, Washington County, and picks up a little bit of southwest Missouri. Washington County employees for 2020, 40,997 or $19.71. We're tracking just a little bit behind the state average and about $3 behind, a little over $3 behind on a regional average. The next slide looks at the Washington County scatter graph of actual pay based on employees paid for August of this year. Each dot on this graph represents an employee. It's their pay and the points for their position. The turquoise line going up from left to right represents the internal average. So it's an actual representation of average based on actual pay and points. The range structure, the green line represents the minimum, the orange line represents the midpoint, and the red line represents the maximum. And as we get further into this report, we're going to see that we have almost 75 employees now over the maximum.
Sorry. Excuse me for interrupting. I know it's rude, but I need to ask you a question. Since I don't have a red line or a green line, do you want to talk about the top line or the bottom line?
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right. So the bottom line on your graph of actual 4 lines with the bolder, darker line representing the internal average. The lowest lighter line represents the minimum. That's 80% of the middle light line, which is the middle line just below the bold line, which represents the midpoint. The top line represents the most upper line of the sequence of lines. That represents the maximum. That's 120% of the midpoint. So you'll see that we do not have very many employees under minimum, and the discussion you had about the juvenile detention officer positions, one of the recommendations that we're going to make this evening is to increase the pay structure by 3%. In the past, we've looked at what's the cost to the county if you raise your range structure by 3% because you have some employees under the new minimum, less than the new minimum. But with the changes that you're making with the juvenile detention officer positions, moving them from a grade 10 to a grade 13, actually, we go into this new budget cycle this next year without any employees under the minimum of the new 3% increase in the range. Historically, that hasn't happened. And probably one of the reasons why it hasn't happened is because it's been almost 5 years since the county has raised the range structure, almost 5 years. Which means that we've had employee pay movement, but not structure movement. So typically in the past, it would have cost us some dollars to get employees under minimum of the new minimum into the first quartile. We will not have that expense if you agree to move the range structure by 3% for the new 2021 budget cycle. All right. So, but I will point out again, we have quite a few employees over the maximum of their respective job grade range maximum for their position.
Blair, how many on the maximum or over the maximum?
If we were to give a 4% increase in pay for the new budget cycle, we'd have 75 employees over the maximum. I'm gonna make a recommendation that we not increase their base pay, but we give them a 3% one-time check instead of adding to their base pay. And we'll talk about that here in the next few slides. From a market pay comparison standpoint, we check with the market against your current employee's pay with the market pay to see how we're doing competitively in the marketplace. On this slide, it's Washington County Market Pay Variance Summary, August 2020. If you look down through the variance column, to the left of that, you'll see Northwest Arkansas Department of Labor. Just below that, the NOARC survey, Benton County, Pulaski County, and Northwest Arkansas cities. The negative percentage there represents that Washington County's pay based on the number of title comparisons, and that's out to the right, based on, for example, 183 position titles in pay compared to the counties. The county is 7.6% behind the Northwest Arkansas Department of Labor average, 7.3% behind the NOARC survey average, 6.8% behind Benton County, 6.5% behind Pulaski County, and 6.1% behind the Northwest Arkansas City average. And the Northwest Arkansas City average represents the large cities, Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, and Fayetteville. Overall, 6.88% behind market. That compares to last year, 4.78% behind market, and back in 2018, 4.11% behind the market mean. So we had an increase in the amount that we're behind market between last year and this year. 6.88% behind market.
What is the justification behind that?
Well, a couple things. One, I believe last year, what was the overall increase that,
3%?
3%. And the market had been moving a little bit higher than 3%, historically. Plus, another reason is this year we included Pulaski County in the study. And previously we had Sebastian County in the study, and Sebastian County was not reflective of this market any longer. And so, last year we dropped Sebastian County, and this year we added Pulaski County because it's a Class 7 county. So the combination of dropping Sebastian County and adding Pulaski also added to the 2% difference, a little over 2% difference between last year behind market and this year. All right. If you go on to the next slide, you look at the various progression over the last 10 years. 2011, we were 3.62% behind market, and you'll see that that progresses up to 2015 at about 3.31% behind market. In 2016, 7.16 behind market. The Quorum Court made a decision representing the 2017 budget cycle. The Quorum Court approved a little over 5% adjustment in pay for the 2017 budget, which took that down to negative 4.33%. And then we've been inching our way up to the 6.88% over the last 3 years. The overall average is about 4.14%. Historically, when we've presented to the Quorum Court, we said that we'd like to stay around 3% behind market because of your retirement plan and your benefits and how those compare to the market. If we can put a little less emphasis on matching market with a stronger benefit plan. And the courts pretty well accepted that over the years, that we would track behind the market on the comp side because we have good benefits for the employees. But 6.88% is starting to really move out of a comfort range when you look at total comp, both compensation and benefits. All right, if you go to the next slide, recommendations for the 2021 budget, increase the civilian service employees' pay by 4%. Historically, when we were presenting to the quorum court, we would talk about all employees. But when the sheriff's department enforcement employees went to a step pay plan, then because they're in that step pay plan, we're not tracking them like we would the rest of the employees. So when we're talking about increased civilian service employees, we're talking about all employees inclusive of the adult detention officers. And we're not talking about enforcement, sheriff's enforcement officers. Increase the 2020 pay range schedule by 3%. So moving it up 3% for the 2021 budget cycle.
Make sure I understood this. Are the law enforcement people in this analysis?
They're not.
They're not.
They're not the enforcement, that's correct. They're not in this analysis because they're matching or benchmarking the city of Fayetteville's pay plan. And so we don't include them in this study because.
What would that, including that in this, do to this analysis?
That's a good question, because it's been a while since we've done that. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. Right.
Would it be a fair statement that it would make us look better, not worse?
Well, it would be better with current pay, but if we had the sheriff's pay 2 years ago, then the answer would be no. We'd probably track it about 4 to 5% behind market. But with their current pay, I would say yes, with their current pay tracking along with the city of Fayetteville pay plan.
JP, Pond.
If you said, I wanted to clarify, I didn't really understand. Is adult detention in this?
Adult detention is in there.
Okay, thank you.
The detention officers, not law enforcement.
All right, JP Ecking.
This includes dispatch, detention officers, transport, community service, clerical, and of course, the sheriff himself.
Well, the sheriff's.
Well, he'd be separate.
Right.
Okay, but that's who this would affect, and not law enforcement. So
Right.
those are the positions
So-
that it would include. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So then, no base pay increase for employees where the increase in their current pay would place the employee's pay above their respective pay grade maximum. This is where we have, I think on the next slide, I think we have around 75 employees. If they were to receive the 4% increase that we're recommending for the 2021 budget cycle, their pay would exceed the maximum. We're recommending that we not add to their base pay for your next budget cycle. It caused them to go over the maximum, that for those employees that would go over the maximum, that they would receive a 3% bonus check or a check, a one-time check at the end of the year or at the beginning of the new budget cycle, and not add to their base, because they're well above the market mid-corner mean.
JP Ecking.
I would like to say that perhaps it would be like a salary, not a bonus check, because bonus checks is taxed higher than just regular salary. So we would need to be specific on how we would have that tax.
Right.
Just as regular income and not a bonus.
Okay, I'm with you. So regular income doesn't have to be reflected as a bonus. It just means that we're not saying we're not going to add to your base pay. It's going to be a separate one-time check.
That would be great.
Right. Okay, good point.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, well, we put any monetary figures to these percentages?
yes.
Okay,
Two more slides.
okay.
Okay, so the 2020 pay plan adjustment, the reasoning for making the recommendations, one, we're 6.88% behind the market mean and 6.883% behind the market median for the 2020 market pay study. Regional averages on salary increases will be somewhere between 2.4 and 3.3%. Historically, we look to see where our employees' pay falls within that graph at the midpoint. How many are below the midpoint, what percentage are above the midpoint? And county employees with pay below the pay grade range midpoint increases from 54% to 64% with the 3% adjustment in the pay grade range schedule. And what that means is that as we move that schedule up, employees pay here until we add that 4%, so we would have 64% under midpoint. If you give the 4% increase in employees' pay, then we'll move to 55% above the midpoint. That's a good placement for our employees with the tenure that they have. Typically, you look at a 50-50 relationship with good tenure with your employees around that midpoint. With the 4% adjustment and 3% adjustment to the range, we would have 55% employees above the midpoint. That's a good position to be in, when historically we've had about 60%, 50%, or 55% below the midpoint. So I think that would be a good position. And then the last slide, and Madam Chair, this is where the budget numbers come in. So the civilian staff, including the juvenile detention officers, $773,032 for 497 employees. This is not county benefits. This is just base pay only. And that breaks out to $657,362 or 4% for 422 employees, $115,670 for the 3% that we would give the one-time check to the 75 employees, where they would be over the maximum of their pay grade. The sheriff, jail, chief deputy, majors and captains, and uniform officers on the STEP plan will be in the sheriff's proposed budget. So we're not talking about the sheriff's budget concerning those positions.
So basically, if we add those together, we have $7,730,000, whatever, $32. But that does not include FICA or retirement.
That's correct. The benefits are not included. This is just base pay only.
Because the figures that I sent out to you all with the 3% increase was $807,484. That's what Shannon Worthen figured. So, that's a pretty concrete figure, but I'm sure that included everything.
So it has the benefits in it, is what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
benefits in it, yes. So, we're in a range here that we can do this. This will be a decision for the court to make, whether, you like this or not. So, anyway, thank you. Wait a minute, are there any other questions? Okay, J.P. Dickens.
I've talked to several elected officials in preparation for this budget cycle, and they're all just extremely complimentary of their people, and said that, one of the major things that got us through so well is the team that we've had together. So I'm there. I mean, I want to do as much as we can. This is a very troubling time to ask for such large pay adjustments. I would like to see these numbers with the benefits in them. That might definitely pull, in my mind, put us out of the ballpark, if you will. So I appreciate it. Thanks, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
J.P. Jenkins.
J.P. Jenkins, you're recognized. Can't hear you.
I was muted, sorry, I didn't realize. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask the question that had the department heads and elected officials, have they had a chance to review these recommended adjustments?
I don't think so. Well, I'm not sure. No, they haven't.
Well, I would like to put it out there that if they had any voice on any of these recommendations, to please contact the JPs via email or let us know their input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. JP Tom?
If there are any of them listening in that are prepared to give us a comment, I'd like to hear from them right now.
All right, do we have any comments from elected officials? I don't think so, not at this point. I think, we need to see this with everything in it.
We got one right here.
JP Hill.
I'll say so.
Russell Hill.
That's all right. Make a motion.
Yes.
Well, I know for all the elected officials, this year has been a challenge for all of us. We definitely leaned on our personnel in each of our offices and asked them to go above and beyond of a lot of tasks that they ever thought that a lot of us would, have to do. And a lot of us, I know I'm not filling 4 positions right now. At one point in time, I had 8 positions. I looked at my numbers. We just gave back over $58,000 that's going back into the general fund because there are positions that we didn't fill because we were afraid of the way the economy might go south, and we wanted to protect the budget and reduce any further debt, that we have. Everybody's conscious of it. So we want to get as much for our people as we can. I will look at those numbers. I can pull those up, and I'll look at what the Johansson brothers and study it. I did want to, my main purpose tonight was just to remind you as you get ready to talk about salary increases, as to explain, and I don't know if everybody understands the full effect, what the countywide reappraisal will do for us, not only in 2021, 22, 23, 24, and 25. So in 2021, with the reappraisal, we adjusted the values. We saw a 48% increase in revenue across the county, shattering all projections. We thought we would hit somewhere about a 30% growth over the last 5 years. We hit 48. So Amendment 79 comes into play. And so with that, it puts caps on all these properties. So instead of going to the new full assessed amount, that would be a huge burden on property owners to take a large increase like that, and property developers, because I know you pay your share of tax. So you have these caps that are put in place. So in 2021, we're going to see about $1 million increase to our budget because of the reappraisal. We're going to see it again in 2022. We're going to see it again in 2023 because these values are continuing to stair-step up. For example, if you took a $200,000 house, the house was valued at $200,000 in 2015. And if we increase that value 35%, which there are a lot of properties that went over that, that house is now worth $270,000. So, and with a 57.95 millage, their property taxes would be $2,318 is what they've been paying on 2015 up to 2019. With the cap, it'll go up. It'll increase $116. If it was to go to the full assessed all at once, it would go up $811. So with the caps in place, instead of going that full $800 all at once, each year it's going to go up $100. The next year it's going to go up $100 more on top of that. And so we're going to, what I'm saying is I know we're in the darkness of a budget deficit, but with the reappraisal and the revenues that we're going to have coming in, we're going to see, historically, we've taken $1 million hit to the county budget, but in the future, we're going to see a $1 million addition, and then another $1 million addition just for the reappraisal. That's not including these incredible new construction values that are also coming into play as well. So I know that we're wanting to be pretty aggressive in putting money back, but I'm telling you, the money's going to start rolling in. And I know we want to build the reserves. I think reserves are great. I think we like the plan of that Sam that brought in. We're not opposed to that at all. We just didn't know at the time when we were bringing in our budgets that we were supposed to add raises of any kind. So when we put in our budgets, we didn't add that in because typically the quorum court usually does about a 3% COLA. you know? But, so my suggestion would be if,
Mr. Lester, do we have someone on?
Matt Dury.
Oh, okay.
so if we had, so if maybe we put maybe a little bit back in reserves, maybe not as much as we did, knowing that next year we're gonna have another million. And we're gonna have, you know, we could slowly build those reserves up more and more. I just wanna make sure that you knew that we're gonna increase. And then every time a house sells in Washington County, that house, the caps come off. So be careful, property owners. When you go to buy, it goes to the full assessed value. So that house that those people were paying, their property taxes were gonna go up from 23 to 24. Someone else buys that house, their property taxes are gonna be 31.29. So it'll go to the full assessed value. So we were gonna see those increases.
If I may, and that's already in effect, correct? Or
Yeah, it's in effect, yeah, it's done. It's done.
Hang on to your house.
And before the caps reach the 2020 reappraisal amount, we're gonna have 2023 reappraisal coming, and so we're gonna be playing catch up for a long time. So we're gonna see this revenue increase $1 million a year or more, for the next 7, 8 years.
Okay,
or more.
I just want to make a note to that, we could hit a point where millages roll back.
Yes.
So, you know, would you explain that?
Yeah, the rollbacks are if, well, that's highly unlikely to happen.
Well, it's happened, I've been on the court.
Well, that was before Amendment 79.
Yeah.
So when Amendment the only thing that could jeopardize this is if we saw a 2008 burst in the market. And so far, even with COVID, we have not seen a decrease in property values even during this time. So there's still a big shortage of homes. The rollback, yeah, and we'll have those numbers out Thursday because I've already had schools calling me checking to see. But with the Amendment 79 and with the caps put in place, that really protects any sort of a rollback that would take place.
Okay. Do we have anyone?
Matt Dury.
Okay, Matt Dury, you're recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just kind of want to echo some of the things that Russell said about our employees. I can't tell you how proud I am of our employees throughout the course of the last, what we're going on 7 months now almost. They haven't taken off. They haven't wavered. They've kept going. And when all of this hit and we were concerned about the budget impact, there were a lot of elected officials who made some very tough decisions. And the one that I did was I cut back on my employees' hours to 35 hours a week. So that amounts to, by my math, a 12.5% pay cut that lasted over 2 months. And the thing that I'm most proud of is when I informed everybody that we were doing that, I was flooded with emails in response from my employees thanking me for saving their jobs and saying that they're willing to sacrifice even more. And that, I can't tell you how much that means to me. And I think that my employees are the reason that we've been able to keep our head above water these last 7 months, because they've worked tirelessly. They have not complained one single time. And I'm extraordinarily proud of my employees, which I think that any of the elected officials would say the same. I also want to echo what Russell said about the reserves. I really applaud you all for looking at the reserves, and we're trying to save money, and I think that is a top priority, and it should be. So what I would ask is, I know that times are tough. I know that we've got a potential, as Bobby had said earlier, of loss of revenue with loss of Razorback games and Bikes, Blues, and everything else. So I know that the picture is still a little bit unclear, but when it comes down to it, I would just ask that whatever you can give, when you look at the numbers, just think of our employees and how much they mean to us and how much they do for us, and give them as much of a raise as we can afford. Because as everyone would say, we can't do this. We're only as good as our employees are. And so I want to treat them as well as we can. In light of the circumstances, I know times are tough, but I would just ask you all to see how much we can give and give as much as we can. So I appreciate all y'all are doing. I know this is hard work, and I want you to know that all the elected officials appreciate the work you're putting into this. So thank you.
Okay,
Judge Wood, Judge Wood.
Judge Wood?
Hey, good evening, JPs. I think prosecutor attorney just said it. We cannot do this without our employees. And I think when I sent my letter to you guys a couple of months ago in lieu and getting prepared for the budget, that was my very first note and suggestion, recommendation to you guys, was that we consider looking at our employees on the front end of the budget process, especially during because of the work and the stick-to-itness, if you will, that they've shown throughout this whole 7, 8 months that we've been walking through COVID. But even more than that, you heard from JDC a couple of years back, we started working through the sheriffs. It becomes very difficult when we're falling behind as far as market rates, as Blair Johansson just kind of showed we continue to show the gaps, making it that much more difficult to hire folks. Therefore, we end up sending a lot of money back to the county coffers now with the sweep, or just turning it back in because, again, we've gone so long without vacancies, whether it be Judge Zimmerman just recently with the social worker, and our JDC group, our road department. So again, I think looking hard at this proposal by Blair Johansson really starts to get us back to being somewhat competitive. I do know that, again, we talked about reserves, and I'm all about getting our reserves up. And again, I also mentioned we can do that, and how we do it, and being steady to do it throughout the coming years. On top of, obviously, the outlook as far as what we're expecting in way of anticipated revenues in the coming year. Assessor Hill has been talking to the elected officials about what's going on. He just shared it again with you guys tonight. So I think we do have some opportunities to not only support our employees here in the county for the work that they're doing in the county in lieu of what's been happening here with COVID, but also to, again, shore up and minimize some of the gap in the market, whether it be looking at the city of Fayetteville or our county to the north, or even like counties surrounding us down in, say, Pulaski. So those are the comments I want to make. We again, applaud our employees. And so, again, filling and working toward minimizing that gap market rate would be very helpful. Thanks, Chairman.
Tim Helder, Sheriff Helder.
Tim Helder, you're recognized.
Put your meat in here tonight. Thank you, Ann. I know that I'll be addressing the court in just a moment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'll be addressing you on our jail budget here in just a moment, but I did want to weigh in on the employee compensation. And I think really I echo all the statements made by Russell, Matt, and the judge for all employees, but I do want to zero in on our detention employees for just a moment to make sure that everybody actually realizes that they have, throughout this process dealing with COVID, they have come to work every day, every shift. Some of them caring for children with medical issues, with elderly parents, having to wade into that, the great unknown, if you will, in our jail, not knowing if they're going to contract the virus or not. I kind of weighed in with the governor early on whenever he singled out the medical profession as people that needed compensation. And I argued that our detention folks should be right in line because they don't even have the medical training that our medical folks do, but they have to come to work every day anyway. So they've been dealing with fear of the unknown. They've been dealing with actual COVID cases within the jail. I checked with Kelly just a moment ago. I think as of today, we have 16 employees that are off in quarantine for one reason or the other. We've got some that actually have COVID. We've got others that have direct contact. Over the process since March, we've had, and this is a ballpark, but I'm going to say that we've had 130 or so employees that have been off in quarantine or with COVID in some form or fashion. And all the while, we have done this while having a hiring freeze within the jail. And I know that our numbers are down, but they still have a job to do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I thank you for considering what Blair has presented. I think the 4% is reasonable. And I speak on behalf of all county employees, but I'm zeroing in on our detention folks right now because I don't think that you have any idea what they're dealing with on a daily basis. And I'm very proud of them, and I hope you are too. Thank you, and I'll address you in a little bit. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Sheriff.
Kyle Sylvester.
Kyle Sylvester. Kyle, are you there?
We go to Roger Morris while we wait. Roger Morris.
Okay, Roger Morris, you're on.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm basically echoing what Tim said and all of them. My staff and I, we're putting in lots of 20-hour days. We just worked our 149th COVID death of the year. And my people have not complained one time. You know, they're in it every day. We're moving them every day. I couldn't be proud of a better staff. I'd like to send out, if you see any of my staff, please just pat them on the back and thank them. A lot of times a thank you will go a long way. I'd love to see them get a 4% raise. In fact, if the elected officials are supposed to get raises this year, I'll donate my raise to my employees.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else?
Can you hear me? Did I jump in?
No, Kyle, yes. Speak.
Like I said, I'm going to be the broken record, voicing the same thing that all the other department heads have talked about. And I've spoken to some of the JPs individually that come to my office. We've talked about, the staff members and we've done our best this year, as our prosecutor said, of looking at and being proactive on our spending, and not knowing what this thing was going to bring us. We were looking at, or even projecting up to a $4.5 million deficit. So we made those adjustments. Matt cut his employees' pay back. A lot of positions weren't filled. People had to take on extra responsibilities, and I myself lost 6 people. 6 people out of 24, folks. And I'll tell you one thing, the staff that I have left have stepped up to the plate. They've taken on more responsibilities than actually they should be having. And they're here every day, regardless of what's going on with, kids, possibly being in virtual, they're still coming to work. I've had 2 employees so far during this thing test positive for COVID. And they, that's the danger of getting out and about and coming to work. So I appreciate the job that you guys do every single year. It's tough. It's hard to run the county's finances. I'm in agreement with the judge talking about, we want to make sure that we have good reserves, and when we started on passing the budget controls, I know that JP Duncan talked about wanting $5 million in reserves. Looking at the numbers today, there is $5 million in the reserves. We're doing pretty good. And so I think that's a great milestone. And as we look at next year's budget, we've trimmed back so hard on our budgets, and I can speak for all of the elected officials. We've got it down to the reams of paper, so to speak. And I truly feel like that, looking at the Johansson model, and looking at where we are, almost 7% behind everybody else, we need to catch up. And if that means giving 7% raises, then I think we ought to do it, because they deserve it. Every single one of them deserve it. That and more, actually. But I think that, looking at what our numbers are projected for next year, being realistic, let's reward our employees all the time, putting money back in reserves over time, but let's reward our employees because they deserve it. And so I'll stop talking now. Thank you.
I think, everybody on this court appreciates all the elected officials have done during this crisis. Or it's an ongoing situation, and we still don't know exactly what our revenues are going to be for these next 3 months.
Bobby Hill.
Okay, Bobby Hill.
All right, I'll be quick, so I know y'all got other stuff to do, but early on, I was almost in panic mode as I envisioned the bottom falling out of my revenue projections. And thankfully, that never materialized. I'm not saying we're not going to have some struggles going forward, but I think right now we do have the funds for at least a small raise, and I don't believe you can ever go wrong investing in your people. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
JP Eva Madison.
Okay, JP Eva Madison.
So I agree. I mean, I don't disagree with anything any of the elected officials have said. We need to do all we can to reward our employees this year. My concern, though, is the inequity that a 4% raise brings. And I know that JP Harbison and JP Pond, you'll recall our discussions in past years where, in particular, JP Tom Lundstrom Sr. and I, as well as former JP Joe Patterson, were advocating for some kind of flat increase because of the people at the bottom. And in looking at the budget this year, what struck me as particularly painful was that we have like directors of departments, environmental services stands out, who make in the $30,000 range. And I see like that, JDC has come forward and asked to bump up their pay, but my concern remains the people at the bottom. And I wonder if anybody is looking out for all of these other people. I know some of us will remember the controversial, very large raises that were given to a number of select employees of the county judge not too long ago. Those people shouldn't get a 4% raise. I'm sorry. They got like healthy raises. So while I advocate to reward all of our employees with at least a cost of living adjustment, I believe that the bottom should get the most here. And if we're going to talk about any raise, we're talking about COLA. We're talking about cost of living. We're not talking about merit or rewarding people. We're talking about just a little thank you to say, hey, you've been really good this year. We're going to help you kind of make it to next year. Your insurance premiums are probably going to go up. We're going to try to smooth the blow of that. But if we're talking about giving 4% raises to people that make $90,000 as compared to 4% to people who make $32,000, I can't support that. I could support some kind of graduated increases or a flat cost of living, but we need to be very mindful of that. I'll also say that we have had a number of new positions that got kind of whitewashed in the budget that we passed through the controls in the general fund. And if we're talking about slicing and dicing employee raises, those new positions should go by the wayside so that that money can go toward raises. I think that's a much better use. I don't think it says much to our current employees who've been working hard, some of whom have actually contracted COVID, to say to them, hey, well, you're only going to get 2% because we got to hire these other new people that haven't been through it with you. So I would like to find some kind of hybrid where we maybe do like a approach of, a 4% for the bottom, a 3% for the middle and maybe a 2% for the top. Because I can't vote for anything that gives highly compensated people a 4% raise. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
J.P. Jenkins.
okay, Andrew Jenkins, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't agree more with JP Madison's sentiments on that. I totally agree with some sort of raises that give to those who need it the most. And I just wanted to, listening to these county officials, these elected officials, it is so obvious what a heartfelt support you have for your employees. And I just want to commend you for that. That's amazing. Washington County is so lucky to have you guys, and just hearing what you all said and what you were willing to do for your employees and what your employees have done for you is wonderful. So thank you for sharing with us tonight. And like JP, Eva Madison said, the bottom deserve it the most and need it the most. And that's exactly what I heard all the elected say. They were all saying how hard their employees work. Roger Morris offered to give his raise to his. So we really, as a court, have got to focus on our employees. And that's why I was having trouble with what we've been debating over JP Jenkins' ideas and giving the percentages and having the raises within those percentages. So I just wanted to say thank you to the elected officials, and I hope we can move forward with the employees in mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, if I Blair, can you kind of answer some of those questions about the spread of that money, since if we do the range, who does that benefit the most?
So when we increased the range by 3%, if we had employees that were making less than the minimum of the new range, it would impact them. But that's not going to be the case now, because our employees' current pay will be above the minimum of the new 3% adjusted range. So it really doesn't impact the employees. What it does impact is we go from about our lowest grade level right now is grade 6, and the custodians and janitors are in grade 6, $11.08. That'll go to $11.42 on the minimum. So we are above the current, we'll be above the current, well, we're above now, but we'll be above the state minimum of $11 for 2021 with the schedule we are now, but we'll be a little bit higher with $11.42.
So people that are in with the grades that they're at, and we increase the grades by
The 3%.
about 4% is what you had suggested.
The range schedule.
The range.
3%. What that does is it helps improve our minimums.
And the 4%
right.
was across the board?
Across the board.
Okay. All right. J.P. Pond.
I guess, listening to the comments, that different ones were making, maybe I misunderstood, but your recommendations was basically doing what other people were saying they wanted. If I didn't misunderstand, your ones at the bottom were gonna get get forward. And then you're sliding the scale for it.
Well, no, because we're just saying 4%.
Okay,
overall.
4% overall, but some of them are capped out and they won't get that. They'll get
The ones over maximum, 75 employees would receive a 3% one-time check.
All right.
And not add to their base.
Okay, so I didn't misunderstand. That's the way I understood it. The ones that are maxed out are still gonna get, they're gonna get a compensation check, but it's a one-time deal.
Not add to the base, and it'll be less than the 4%, it'll be a 3%.
Okay. So
we're addressing some of the questions or comments made about the employees being, the ones that are at the higher end of their pay range.
Okay.
Maximum, we're addressing that with a 3% instead of a 4%. So some of the sentiment about addressing pay at the lower end of the schedule and the upper end of the schedule is being addressed by the employees that are over the maximum. It's not quite the same as you're distributing 4-3-2, that's what was recommended.
Okay.
So I was listening to other comments and I thought, well, maybe I heard that wrong, but I understood what you said.
Right.
I do know that in the past, when we've not been able to comply with your recommendations that year, it's really tough to play catch up later on.
Yes.
There's a history there.
That's correct.
And I would caution anyone listening, not to vary from what you're trying to do for us, if at all we can afford.
Correct.
Start playing around with it, and start trying to do one thing or another, and you wind up with some problems that were unforeseen, but you've seen them before.
Right.
Okay,
I think the combination of moving the range 3%, doing the 4% and the 3% for those over the maximum one-time check, the combination of those two will put us in a better competitive position for this next budget cycle.
JP Lemming,
But still yet, the county can go give $300,000 for a road grader, and the county asks somebody for $13 an hour to run it. That don't make sense. And you give a $13 an hour guy 3%, that ain't nothing. I mean, we have got to get that changed. Just like the county can't haul dump truck drivers because they can go drive a tuned concrete truck for $27 an hour, and we're asking them to come over here and drive a dump truck for $14, $15 an hour. You ain't never gonna keep help down at the road department that's worth the crap if you don't get their pay up enough to pay them, and you can't pay them 3% on what they make because it don't work. You're gonna have to figure it out a different angle because it ain't gonna work for us. We're gonna always have turnover. And we're always gonna have problems there. So straight across the board, 3 and 4%, like Eva says, it's not fair. It's not fair. You ain't never gonna get good help on the bottom if you don't pay them and get them off the bottom. So we're gonna have to figure out how to pay them and get them off the bottom. Plain and simple.
all right, I don't, we can't make a decision on this tonight because we don't have some hard figures as to what the 3 and the 4% and it's gonna cost. So what I suggest is that we meet next Tuesday night, October the 13th, to decide what we're gonna do about salaries. Are there any conflicts to this, having a meeting next Tuesday night? JP Madison, Eva Madison.
I'm sorry, I wanted to speak on something else. I don't have a conflict.
Okay. So we're gonna set a meeting then for salaries next Tuesday night, and we will not have anything. Mr. Johansson, can you come next? Okay, you can. Okay, okay. So we'll postpone this until next Tuesday night when we have more concrete, information, as to how much the salaries are going to cost. Okay, let's move on to the sheriff's department. Jay and Randall and Kenny, you want to come and present your budget and the sheriff on that?
You can sit where as long as your desk is not on.
I think they're trying to get you.
The sheriff's on.
Hi again, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for your debate on the raises. I think it'll show all the employees that you're taking this matter very seriously, and thank you for that. We can't ever forget our most precious assets that the county has. So without I'm going to hand it off to Jay and Randall and Captain Yates here in just a second. But and without sounding, or at least regurgitating what the budget process is all about, Jay and I talked today, and kind of a couple of comments I'd like to make before they take the hot seat, if you will. So, you know, the budget expenses are a forecast, you know, and revenue projections are a forecast. And Bobby just always forecasts a little on the low side to avoid the end of year surprises. And at the sheriff's office, we always forecast a little on the high side to avoid end of year surprises. Well, in both cases, the extra money goes back into the county coffers. So let's don't forget that. The sheriff's office and the JDC, and I heard y'all talking a lot about JDC earlier, you know, we're a 24/7 operation. So when you talk about us specifically, we're working 8,736 hours per year as opposed to 2,250 hours for the 8 to 5 offices. Not dissing the other offices. I'm just explaining what it is we go through in this 24/7 operation. So you can hear my dog barking. I'm outside actually talking to you guys. So on our salary sweeps through 3 quarters, it looks like we're about 555,000, going to be close to $750,000 for the year. Our revenues have come in better than expected. We're going to have money left in some of the line items. And so hopefully that general fund infusion that we always count on, we're not going to be relying on that much. In fact, I think if we go back over the last couple of years, we've either taken none or very little money out of general fund. We always have to budget on the high side, but I think you'll agree that this year we haven't taken any out of general fund yet, and the odds are we're not going to. Let's see. You also know, and I know that I'm telling you something you already know, but the budget's divided into 4 sections, which is personnel, supplies, services, and capital. And I don't know how everybody else's budgets weigh out in this, but our budget's very heavy on the personnel side, about 76% actually. Our supplies are about 1.1 million. Let's see. Our supply budgets, you know, our detainee food takes up 60% of that. Services, out of the 1.37 million, the majority, 78% go toward our detainee medical. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room in operations. The majority go to personnel costs and then services. And while I'm on services, before I hand off to Jay, and they'll talk more about this, but I want to brag on our medical team. You guys trusted us when we went with Karis, and I got to continue to brag on that group. They work around the clock at our place. Kelly and Dr. Karis do a wonderful job. I was talking to Kelly Cantrell a while ago, and she kind of brought me up to speed that Karis has done approximately 240 COVID tests just for Washington County employees. That's not counting our detainees and what the health department came in and did. So, I mean, that's over and above, and they're exposing themselves on a daily basis like our folks are, but kudos to them. And at this point, I want to thank you again for your debate and your thoughtful process on raises for our employees. And I'll turn it over to Jay, Randall, and Kenny at this point. Thank you.
Okay, Randall, since you're in charge of the jail, do you want to lead, or are you going to push Jay out there?
I'll let you start now.
Oh, okay.
Well, you know, you all have seen the revenue projections from Bobby, and the jail revenue is down about, or he's projected down about $1 million from last year. So that's a big lick all the way across. You know, we are hoping that maybe those will come in a little higher, but you know, he's got to be conservative with his projections, because we don't want a surprise in October that Bobby says, "Oh, I misfigured," and looks like we're all going to be short. And we don't want to misfigure. We don't want to come in here in October and say, "Oh, we didn't budget very well because now we're out of money and we need to you can give us more money." That's why we try to forecast a little bit high and then give back what we don't use. Bobby's the same way. He likes to forecast, I think, a little low and give back. Then it comes in better, so, you know, but that $1 million is gonna be hard to overcome, any way you look at it. So, you know, with that, all that, Randall and Kenny, they prepared our budget and, tried to cut it where they could, and I guess I'll mention also, you know, those 6 positions that we talked about, cutting out, and then the core important decided to leave. We're still committed not to fill those positions, until absolutely necessary, and when we do, we will come to the court and let you know that those need to be, we need to start pulling 1 or 2 of those out, but, you know, that's, probably $300,000 a year, that those will turn back that we don't fill. And then when we do fill a position, when somebody leaves, we have a pretty high turnover, much like Willie's talking about the road department. You know, our pay for our jailers is not great. We have a lot of turnover. It takes us 30 days minimum if somebody leaves to get somebody back in. So those positions, when somebody leaves, then we have to find somebody to do a background check on them. They have to meet the sheriff. He has to interview them. They have to get a psychological exam. They have to get a physical exam before they're ready to hire, and then sometimes give a 2-week notice at their current job. So it takes us 30 days or longer to fill a position. So those positions, when somebody leaves, that money goes back into the salary sweep. So that's how we end up with, you know, $750,000 a year. Is just because it takes time to fill our position. Somebody at the assessor's office or maybe at the road department, they might be able to fill a position in a week, or it takes us considerably longer. Anyway, with that, I'll let Randall and Kenny talk a
Well, I
little
think
bit
that
about.
I have someone with a question, J.P. Duncan.
Just a quick question. I just want to make sure I understood the sheriff correctly before we hop into the details, nitty-gritty of things. So, from my understanding, the general fund infusion that took place last year, I think it was $1.3 million to the jail budget. That was not used, correct?
I think we might have to verify with Bobby, but I think we were at 50,000 is what we actually used. So
Okay.
he has to budget based on forecast, but in reality, we haven't spent, I think over the last 3 years, it's probably averaged about 200 grand out of general fund. And last year was 50 grand. So just to remind you that that's how it works. Thank you.
No, that's really helpful. I think the big outstanding question is, then, as I look at the budget, the essentially request right now shows nearly 1.9 million in general fund infusion, and so I'm hearing that you spent 50,000 of the 1.3 last year. So, what if we went about the budget differently and gave a $50,000 infusion or a $100,000 infusion to start the year, and then if you actually need the money, we've got it in unappropriated reserves in the general fund, and we can then provide for those needs as they arise, rather than having that money tied up in jail fund. That allows us the flexibility to do things like fund capital projects if we needed to, but that would keep that $1.8 million in the general fund unappropriated reserves. Money's still there, it's just in a different account, and that brings our general fund up to, I mean, that we could be at $6.5 million after giving raises. We haven't been there, I don't know, ever. It's been a long time. So,
Right.
just a thought.
Yeah. So if you're asking me if it's okay with me, it certainly is, but that might be more of a question for Bobby Hill to see if it's legal in the budgeting world to do that. But the other point is, look around the horn and how many people are leaving the court, and we don't know about the outcomes. Hopefully you guys will all be back. But it just, the only concerning part for me is that when I do come back and say, all right, you remember that conversation during budget to where we didn't budget for the 1.5 million? Well, lo and behold, we run over in food or medical. And,
Sure.
You know, I don't mind coming back and explaining. That's certainly okay with me. But as long as there's an understanding that we basically may need it in the future. Thank you.
Okay.
No, appreciate that, Sheriff. Thank you.
JP Eva Madison.
Okay, JP Eva Madison, you have the floor. Recognize.
Sheriff, my first question was sort of along the lines of what JP Duncan asked, because I know that typically your budget, which I think is a valid expectation, is $900,000 to $1 million more than revenue. And so we've always had to set aside that money, but thankfully haven't spent much of it. And my specific question though was when the comptroller presented the reserves report tonight, he showed a sort of a net from your 900,000 to 5.04. And you haven't spent $900,000 this year.
Are you speaking out of the, what was budgeted?
Yes.
Out of general fund?
Right.
We spent nothing out of general fund and are likely not to this year, but obviously we've got an anomaly going on.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I fully understand. The report looks like we only have 5.04 in reserves, but we're October at this point. And so I think the likelihood of you all depleting an extra $900,000 between now and the end of the year is pretty rare. So I think we're already clearly sitting above $5 million in reserves comfortably. But my next question is, so I've been very concerned that nowhere in the budget process have we talked about the criminal justice studies recommendations. People had to submit their budgets before that report was in. So folks like the prosecutor and the public defender who might have had recommendations from that report have not been given an opportunity to say, hey, we need this much funding for this aspect of the program. And I was curious from your perspective, like what you think. Your budget, the jail budget is up tonight. That's the big one for this. So is there anything from that report that you think we should be talking about in terms of budgeting?
Well, thanks, Eva. I just, the judge and I have actually been in constant conversation about this, and this may be more directed at him, but we've been talking about the formation of the committee and getting that going, because I do look forward to that dialogue and trying to work with folks to figure out how, and not just me, but the courts and then the prosecutor and the public defender, how we might be able to tweak our system to kind of make it more efficient. Now, as far as budgeting, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to have to try and budget for a facilitator to get us kicked off. I don't know if I haven't gotten deep into the weeds enough with the judge to determine if we're going to need somebody that's going to be a paid person to run the meetings and kind of guide through that. But we're already part of our budget that they'll talk about here in a little bit. You know this, but we're already invested in 2 employees and into an ankle monitoring system to where we can try and keep our pretrial and some of our FTAs out of jail and under a watchful eye. So we're doing some things, and it's going to cost money. I think we're budgeting about $60,000 toward that. May not be in line with your question specifically, but I don't know. I chased a rabbit all the way around the house on that one. But
well, and I guess my concern is that, establishing a committee is one thing, but I think it's going to take more than that. And we paid over $100,000 for this study and have so far not really done any meaningful implementation, because the one that's most interesting to me is that I think the court should address is the pretrial services issue, which will cost money. But I think in the long run, it will save the county money and probably save society some money. But I'll say this, one of my regrets about the step plan ordinance is that it did not include jailers. And so when I speak to the issue of the people at the bottom, it's those folks who are very deserving of at least a 4% increase. And so my goal is definitely to look out for those folks, Sheriff. And I think you know that already, but I'm saying it again. So when we talk about it next week, I'll certainly be on their side.
Well, thank you, Eva, on that. And of course we would have done that, but the numbers are so big. The detention officers comprise of the majority of our employees. And I think it was an insurmountable task to get done. But in reality, it's hard to compare them with other people where we could specifically, our enforcement division, compare them to Fayetteville and Springdale, because that's who we were losing our enforcement folks to. It's hard because you heard Johansson talk about Sebastian County, Benton County. Well, Benton County is ahead of us a little bit, not significantly. So I appreciate that. And I think we ought to look at that because they are underpaid and underappreciated, not by me, not by the court. But where it comes to finances, I think we're woefully underserved. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to make a few comments. You said the average for the last 3 years was somewhere around 200,000. What if we put 500,000 into the reserve, so to speak, and put that other 1.3 million back into unappropriated reserves, and once you had started and drew on some of that 500,000, then, you know, you could come back and say, we need additional money. You drew, I think, 55,000 last year, and you'll not draw anything. Last year was a pretty rough year in overcrowding in the jail. So I really feel if you were really going to need additional money, you would have used it last year. So anyway, do we have anyone else make a comment? All right.
Point of information, if you don't mind, Madam Chair. Have we even decided whose budget would even consider the proposal? I mean, and this is a widespread of the
criminal
justice. I mean, we don't even know whose budget has been assigned to.
It hasn't been assigned
I mean, I don't even recall adopting and approving it. We just heard it.
That's right.
So then why should it even be a part of the budget process as if it hasn't even been?
Well, because people are bringing it up. All right, I have a suggestion. On the court's fees and fines, we paid off the historic historic courthouse, excuse me. According to Bobby, there was $400,000 left in that fund, and it went into the general fund. I didn't understand this, but that line item went away, and that money now just goes into the general fund. For some reason, there had to be a bond issue for that line item to be there. So there's some money in the general fund. If someone on this court wants to do an ordinance to appropriate money for that particular committee. So, you know, there's money, court's fees and fines, that would be appropriate money to use for that. So, if I don't want to get off that issue, let's get back on to the jail and the jail budget. All right.
JP Madison.
All right, JP Madison.
Madam Chair, I was just going to say in follow up to that comment, my understanding that was the eventual plan with that fines and fees court line item was to expand the Juvenile Justice Center. I mean, it's become clear tonight with an ordinance that that's how we're being told that the new judge is going to be put in the annex. But we got rid of a judge in the annex specifically because of the costs associated with that. And now we're going to have to transport all juvenile offenders and from JDC to the annex, which is, and there's not the same issues with the JDC building are going to be problematic for that court building. There's not waiting rooms. There's not, you know, rooms to keep criminal defendants separate. So I don't want to, I mean, as much as I'm interested in implementing things from the criminal justice report, I think that fund needs to go toward the Juvenile Justice Center. So since you brought it up, that's all I'll say.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Let's get back to the jail budget. Let's see, you know, are there any comments, more comments about the jail budget?
I'd like to hear it presented. Can we hear it presented?
Presented?
Yeah, think these gentlemen still have more comments to make.
Oh, okay,
I think we went down the rabbit hole.
all right. Let them, okay.
Let 'em
Go
talk.
on.
I was gonna start out with the budget that, this one is almost the same as last year, but it's about 294,000 less than last year. And, speaking about our $750,000 that we turned back on salaries, that's a pretty common, occurrence every year. We always have 8 or 9 slots open, trying to hire them. Like I said, we talked about them 6 slots, and we've always turned money back at the end of the year. So, talking about that $1.5 million or $1.6 million, and then also, I think you're aware, we got a new marshal's contract, and, that went up, so if, that's gonna make us, could make us another $200,000 or $300,000. But, and also, we don't always spend everything we got. We don't, at the end of the year, we don't go out and spend it, we do turn it back. So just like we showed, we didn't spend any, don't think we're gonna spend any this year, and only $50,000 last year. And that's usually, as the chief has spoke about, we get into 3 pay periods in a month, we get in trouble. So as far as offsetting that, I believe that we're gonna come out, and we won't have to worry very much about that 1.6 million.
Right, any other questions? Anyone else? JP Lemming?
I know we've talked about it, I don't know, I think it's kind of died, but there's 27 pay periods coming, it's still out there somewhere. Is it in your budget?
No, it's going to be at the quorum court next week after next, or next week.
So we're gonna
There'll
do
be
it?
an ordinance to address that. Yes,
Chairman, part of it's in this budget according to their narrative.
Well, that's kind of,
well, it may be.
I was trying to figure that out.
I was
page
told
We
it
was
was
told to put it in our budget, and we was told to
Page
take it out.
183.
183. I was told it was not in the budget.
Well, I've seen it,
I'm just going by what I was told.
Well, I'm just going by what I read.
I think we got some information originally that they wanted us to include that in our budget, as in our packet that we submitted, and then, we got information
Oh, okay.
later on that
You have it in
there may
your
be another,
budget.
there may be
You have it in
another
your budget.
solution
They
to
have it in
that
their budget. Okay.
than the 2021 budget. We may have another
Would
solution.
you tell me exactly what you have in there?
What we have in this? Do we have the 27th?
No.
Included in this one?
No, the last word I heard was to leave it out.
Right. Comptroller told us to leave it out.
Yeah, see.
okay, I got that clarified, thank you.
Okay, but it isn't,
It
didn't clarify.
Going to be addressed at the next quorum court meeting.
What I'm struggling with is we're talking about raises, we're talking about a pay period. Some of that money's in some of these budgets, and some of that money is not in some of these budgets. And I don't know how this court is supposed to sort these numbers out and make any decisions.
Well, things change and people change their minds and.
Well, this isn't about changing their minds, this is about what's in the budget,
Okay,
what's not in the budget.
I understand what you're saying, yes.
It should be noted that having this pay period is not an increase. in salary.
JP speaking.
You guys also built some raises into your budget for the detention side, did you not?
No.
Okay, if you look at page 181,
We don't have.
Oh, gosh. You're kidding.
I made a line there.
Did you see that?
What line? What page?
If you start up in that upper left-hand corner,
181?
there's differences in the 2020 salaries and the 2021 salaries, what is that?
Correct, there are 4 positions in the jail that are in the step plan.
So those are the,
3 positions, the major and 10 captains are in the step plan.
There's more than 3 positions there, though, is there not?
Well, you got one, highlighted.
I can't
really.
I'm a huge critic of the jail budget. One, because it's a, you know, it's a major expenditure of our county, but, you know, we're getting told there's $1.3 million in slack in this budget. If we budget $1.3 million deficit and then we're not putting any in every year, it's very difficult for us to try to hit this moving target, if you will, what this is actually costing us.
I don't know if we can, put an exact figure on what it costs us. We know that revenue's been coming in higher than
I
anticipated.
put the revenue aside.
Okay.
I want your expenses to be closer than $1.3 million off. That's what I'm saying. Last year, 2020 budget, we budgeted a deficit of $1.3 million.
Correct.
You haven't used it.
Correct.
I want our budgets to be closer than that.
That's with Bobby's projections, that's what he projected. Our variables, I mean, we would love to keep you down to the last paperclip.
Right.
You know, when you go from 500 to 800 detainees, and, you know, for this year, a good example is rubber gloves. You won't think much about it, $43 a case. They said by this fall, there'll be 173, and the salesman come by last week and said they're gonna be 210 on your next order. We use about 800 pairs a day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because that things like that, who would ever thought we could go 43 to 210 just on one item?
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Budgeting's hard. It's a forecast. But I wish we were closer than that.
$750,000 of that is gonna be our salary turnback, that those positions that we didn't fill for the time.
I get it. I get it. I just hope, I wish we could be closer than that.
What's difficult for us is to figure out which positions that we would reduce.
Right.
Because we don't know who's gonna leave and who's gonna fill that position, how long it's gonna be open. You know, that's a variable that we really can't predict.
Sure.
Point of information,
Are all those positions are in step raise? You confirm that?
Well, no, if a lieutenant, I saw some lieutenants that were more, if they got promoted this year, and they get the 5% promotion, and they were a high-ranking sergeant, they get 5%, they might go above what the lieutenant was that left. So that may be where that's coming from, is somebody got promoted into a lieutenant's position that was a tenured sergeant, and the lieutenant that left was not tenured, and so with this 5% increase, is what the county allows, a 5% increase, or the bottom of the grade, whichever greater, I think is what JSAP allows, then he may, or he or she or that person may have moved in to that position at a higher level than the person that vacated it.
Sure.
So that will increase the budget, for that particular slot, by whatever that amount is. So it's not necessarily a raise, it's just that they got a promotion sometime in the year, and so when Shannon extrapolates all that out, he figures it on whatever that person in that slot's currently making, for the next year.
Sure.
And so we compare it with what that slot was previous, and it might be more. The salary suite picks up that as it goes along, build in those variances, and then whatever's left moves over into the unappropriated reserve.
Good.
But the actual budgeted raises are only for the major and the two captains. These others are people who promoted throughout the year, and those are the numbers. That's why it appears to be a raise. It's just getting them up to where they should have been.
In their new role, in their
Yes, sir.
promoted role.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. That's a good information to have, yeah.
So, one point of order I intended to make in my opening was the per capita agreement that the county judge signs with all the cities is designed to take up the slack.
Mm-hmm.
So if we spend $50,000, which is, I guess, what our shortfall was last year, that's what the billing was to these cities.
Yeah.
Is based on that shortfall. So if it's $1.3 million, that's the shortfall that we actually spent that, then the cities would be responsible, or I guess if they chose to enter into the
Yeah,
agreement.
and I caution everybody to let that narrative go too far, because we're the people who have to protect the cities now in that spending. You know, I mean, I don't want to look at it as, well, 80% of it will come back to us, because I took that ordinance to include the cities in the deficit recuperation very seriously.
Right.
You know, and to a certain extent, I want to make sure that we're still being good stewards with their dollars.
Certainly, absolutely, yeah, it's all belongs to the citizens of the county.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, J.P. Johnson?
I've got I got a whole list of line item questions and it's getting late, but I'm with what Justice Deacon said. I think we gotta get the budget a lot closer than we got it. And last year, you gentlemen remember, we had a conversation about the utilities.
Right.
Okay, you have requested next year the same as last year. This is for electric, gas, and water. You've requested $885,000 for next year. You spent $179,000 in the first 6 months of this year. That tells me there's $227,000 that you aren't gonna need. So if we're not gonna need it this year, why are we budgeting an extra $227,000 next year?
Which line item are you referring to, water or electric or 3060 electric? Did you say electric or water?
Say again,
Did you say electric or water?
No, I combined the
All
three
three
of
and
them
gas?
rather than talking separately, but it looks to me like we're not spending anywhere near what we budgeted this year, and yet we want the same amount of money next year. And
Well,
I
last
can
year we
find-
got up to almost 800 folks in jail. And then when COVID hit, the AAC, our attorney said, you gotta get this amount out. We got down to 375 folks, when we finally leveled off. And so that dropped our money, that you say, the water's really the biggest thing. You still have to run the building and, with the gas and electric. Well, that was in March, we got down to the 375. We've been building ever since, we've talked to everybody, they've helped us keep them out. But our high count today is 535. It's still climbing. It's, the year's not out. So by next year, we're gonna be back up in the 600, 700 range or wherever we fall out at.
Well, I'll keep track.
But
Okay.
as of today, we've used 78% of our budget for electricity.
For what?
Electricity, we've used 84% for gas and 65% for water.
So are you saying the numbers we got then to analyze for the budget are wrong again this year?
No, I'm not saying that at all, but if you look at your budget document, probably at the top of it, it says that it was as of June.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I can't read your lips. I don't have a clue what you're saying.
My wife's the same way, so I can relate to that.
Okay.
So if the document you have, I don't have it, but it probably says as of June 3rd. 30th, okay. Here we are in October now. We've spent money for the last 4 months. Just when the day we're given this thing to turn it in, our expenses don't stop. They continue to go throughout the year.
I get it. I multiplied 6 months times 2 to get 12 months.
This is the same problem we had last year. Your document was a June document, and like I say, in March, we're 325, now we're at 535, and things are going up. You probably, the court probably needs a accurate, account, this month when you're looking at stuff. The variable is the population.
Well, I get it, but you gotta run the heat, the air conditioning, regardless of the population.
Absolutely.
And the amount of water we budgeted for last year was an additional 3 or 4 million gallons. That's a lot of showers, guys.
The water is the lowest out of these three here. There's more savings on water this year because of the population.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, last year, the city of Fayetteville gave us a water hike increase. It was in our justification last year.
I get it, but water's not that expensive.
No, it's not for the average person, but when you start running a facility 24/7 with that many folks, it gets very expensive.
Point of information, please.
Just a minute. Are you finished, JP Johnson?
I'll stop.
Okay, you're recognized, JP Jenkins.
I'm sorry, I called a point of information a few times. We cannot hear what page number you're referring to. All I heard was 181. So I turned to 181 and I've been trying hard to get attention so I could follow along with this conversation. And I'm aggravated that I was not given the opportunity to ask that ahead of time when I first asked for a point of information. That's all I wanted to know. I have no idea what page number we just looked at and discussed. We can't hear everything. So maybe if it's a point of information, maybe you can.
Want to be recognized as, other than that?
Point of
No, I just want to say that if someone has a point of information, please call.
I can't hear
I
you.
said it 3 times.
Enough. Well, I
An
didn't
additional
hear
point
you.
of information,
Enough.
Madam Chair, we can't tell who's talking.
Excuse me. Enough. Thank you. All right. JP Duncan, I think.
There is no such thing as a point of information. There's a
No.
request for
Nobody's
information.
talking to you,
There's a
Mr.
point
Lester.
of
I asked to
order.
be recognized by the chair for a point of information. We can't tell who's speaking.
Point
There-
of
I
order.
wasn't talking
Let's
to you,
maintain
JP
the
Madison. I was
forum.
explaining to the chair and the parliamentarian that there's no
The
such thing as
parliamentarian
a point
is
of
the
order.
chair asked them to. Check your rules.
So how do we ask for the information then? What's the
Right.
parliamentary
Are
procedure?
stuck. How do we ask?
Tell me the parliamentary procedure so I can know next time, please.
You request the information when you're called upon.
No, that's not accurate.
Here. I had no idea what we were referring to. I should be able to
What?
follow along.
Please, rule.
I'm just saying, I don't find a point of information under Robert's rules. There's points of order as it relates to the business and the parliamentary procedure in a meeting. A request for information is not the same as point of information. That was my only thing. I wasn't browbeating anybody, especially not the know-it-alls.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
not being no.
Out of order. That is out of order. Call down our parliamentarian right now, Madam.
I was just wanting to follow along. That's
Well,
all.
we're finished with that. I'm sorry.
Again, by our parliamentarian until the chair.
Madam Chair, I have the floor.
I will not.
Yes, JP Duncan has the floor.
Is Treasurer Hill still on the line by chance?
He is.
Yes.
Just a question for you, Treasurer Hill. I understand from this that if there's turn back or if there's leftover revenue that was appropriated to the jail fund that was unused, what happens with that money at the end of the year? Because you're saying it's turned back. So does that come back to county general or does that stay within the jail fund?
It stays in the jail fund.
Okay. So where, if we had 1.3 million that was appropriated last year on infusion, is that money that'll carry over then essentially to 2021?
Yes, I mean, whatever they don't spend, goes back to help fund the next year.
Okay.
So like
is
we
that-
had coming into 2020, they had over $1 million in the jail fund, and that was due to them being careful and not spending that money. So, so that allowed their carryover to be better than expected.
Forgive my ignorance. I'm just trying to understand. So then if we've got $1 million from last year and then another 1.3 from this year, is there $2.3 million that are not included in the 15 million revenue that's just sitting in a fund that could be utilized towards the budget?
No, right. Of course, I deal differently with budget numbers and real numbers. So sometimes there's confusion there, but right now there's 800,000 in the jail fund going forward. And as the revenue comes in, of course, it's added and expended. But there's no $2 million to make up the difference right now. And
So how much is
going back to that, you were asking if, I mean, he would have to cut his budget by about 2 million if you didn't want to put anything for general to fund. I mean, there's no other way to get around it. They would have to actually cut their budget by 2 million.
To not do the infusion, is what you're saying?
Yeah, because
So what happens to the carryover then? Where is that money sitting? Can you not use part of that carryover to help fund the gap in the budget?
That is part of their available revenues carryover. That's
So
the
in
whole,
the 15, I don't have the numbers in front. I do. I just have to turn to it.
15.6 million they have available to budget.
So
Carryover
that's
is included in that.
15. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
I have a question of clarification while we've got you, Bobby. On
Okay.
the General fund infusion, that number is on the budget out there of 1.898592.
Yes.
That money's still in the general fund until they draw on it. Is that correct?
The way I do it is I do not touch the general money until jail runs out of money. And by law, I can't pay any bills or anything as long as there's a deficit. And so then I would request a court order moving just enough to cover them until their next revenue come in.
So like the 55,000 they used last year, they were short in their budget 55,000 one month, and you moved that 55,000 over into the jail fund.
That's correct.
Okay, okay.
I know this is probably out of order, but earlier you talked about the 27th payroll. That I tried to include that in the carryover figures on the budget summary. So that would be page 6. But anyway, it is included in the carryover. If y'all don't want to go that route, then it will have to be added to the budget. But anyway, back to jail.
JP Deacons.
Thank you. This is clear as mud.
I bet it is.
Whoever, if we infuse and budget the money from general to the jail, legally, is it allocated to the jail fund?
Not until it's moved there.
Not until you move it there. So
Yes.
it would require the jail to have a deficit in whatever said month or whatever, and you move that money over to the jail fund. Until then, it's still in the general fund?
Yes. I try not to use any of it. When they run out of money, I have to.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you. JP Pond.
Bobby's still on the line.
Yes.
There was some talk about, per capita money received from cities.
Yes.
Are we receiving per capita money from any of the cities?
Well, this year was the first time we did that, and we received everything we were supposed to. But this next year, it's decreased a lot because we haven't put much into general. So next year, you won't see as much as you received this year. But it did all come in like it was supposed to.
That, money's coming in per capita from the cities, that's fixed where it cannot be used for anything but jail, is that correct?
That's correct. It goes into jail and it stays there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? All right, do we have a motion on the jail budget?
Move to pass.
Second.
All right. Got a move and a second,
Eva Madison.
Eva Madison. All right, any further discussion?
Yes.
All right, public comment.
Yeah, I have.
Wait, oh, I didn't see your hand, I'm sorry. J.P. Duncan.
So I guess what I'm hearing from the sheriff is that he would be willing to reduce the budget to take out some of this infusion. And so we're saying we're gonna pass the budget tonight with the infusion. So I would like to revisit and maybe take out some of the infusion, reduce the budgets, and then obviously we will fund law enforcement. We're constitutionally required to, and I'm pro law enforcement, so I think we should as well. So we'll fund it then as needed throughout the year if he were to actually, tap one of these budgets. So rather than infusing up front, my thought would be why not wait or maybe at least reduce the infusion. $1.9 million is a lot of money. So why not hold off on that infusion?
Motion to table it till next Tuesday. Mr. Lester, who's on?
JP Eva Madison.
Okay, J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the
J.P.
mayor,
Madison, you're recognized.
thank you, Madam Chair. I think the sheriff is just trying to be accommodating. I don't think that he can realistically sit there with Jay and Randall and say, sure, we can cut our budget at the jail by $500,000 or $1 million. This has always been the situation of running the jail with unknowns. If we require them to make massive cuts from their budget, it will be on us when there's problems next year. They're not budgeting unrealistically. They're budgeting exactly what they think they need. This year has not been what it's been expected because COVID really changed everything and we got the jail population down dramatically. So I'm going to stick up for Sheriff Helder and say he's being accommodating because he knows that ultimately if we say, Sheriff, we're cutting your budget $1 million, he's going to have to live with it. But Jay and Randall and the sheriff have never over budgeted. They budget for a very uncertain operation at the jail that is beyond their control. So if we want to start cutting it to say we're saving money, then all we're going to do is have to deal with it next year. And I think that's irresponsible budgeting.
Okay, Andrea Jenkins, you're recognized. JP Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If the sheriff's still on, I think before we go further, we should know which side he actually prefers more than the other. He sounds like JP Eva Madison says, I feel like that the sheriff is being accommodating because that's just who he is. And he's a good person. And we need to, I want to hear from the sheriff, Cantrell, which side they truly prefer us to be voting for.
Okay, Sheriff.
Yeah, can you hear me, Ann?
Yes.
It's kind of regurgitation of what I said earlier, but here's the deal. We budget based on history and projection. I think that our folks should be commended, not vilified, for coming in under budget because we do not spend. We're not one of those places that at the end of the year, when the end of the year is approaching and we've got money left in there, we don't go out and spend it. You know, we basically try and budget everything that we're going to need. Now, having said that, I think if we look back historically and see what we've been spending, if you want to find a happy medium somewhere in there, if Bobby Hill is okay with that, I'm okay with coming to you whenever we get to a point where we've got to ask for more money. But just based on history, sometimes we have a change of the guard on quorum court and people don't remember these conversations. So I'm more than willing to work with the court. I understand that my lane is different than yours. You guys are in charge of the budget, in charge of the purse strings, and I'll fall in wherever that lands. I appreciate Sam Duncan's thought process on this. Of course I do, because we haven't spent the money in the past. I also appreciate Eva's position in that she's been here for a while and she understands that we are budgeting on best practices in history and forecasts. So Andrea, to your question, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm more than willing to work with the court on whatever they want to do, but just keep in mind, if we reduce what the actual budget request is to general fund, then we've got to be able to come back and the court be in remembrance of this conversation when we pass this budget. Thank you.
JP Duncan.
So I just want to clarify for everyone, everyone heard that correctly, that the sheriff had said historically they have not spent to the full budget. So no other JPs have said that he spends exactly what he says. That's not been the case. He just said that. In fact, last year he spent $1.25 million less than he was budgeted. I commend him for that. That's great. He came in under budget. Let's just come in a little tighter this year and not put the money in that bucket, and we'll keep it in unappropriated reserves. Because last year we put an infusion of $1.3 million, and he said about $50,000 was spent. So 1.3 million minus 50,000 is 1.25 million. So let's do that this year. I don't know if it's appropriate. Parliamentarian, I'll ask you, is it appropriate for me to make an amendment to request the budget be reduced by $1.5 million?
Well, right now there's a motion to pass the budget as is on the floor.
There is. can
And
make an
so
amendment.
you can move to amend, the main motion, yes.
So I move to amend the budget that's before us, to reduce by 1.5 million.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Okay. Okay. Ryan Lester?
Yep, I'm listening.
Okay. When the budget that we've approved is by line item, what is the 1.5 coming out of? I think we have to know that before we can vote on the amendment.
That would be correct. I mean, you have to amend the budget specifically as to what it is instead of just amending it down because you do pass it by line item. So I think it would be more appropriate to amend by line item, if that makes any sense.
So that would be the infusion,
Right.
correct? Reduce the infusion.
So reduce the infusion down to,
So it's
Make it easy.
1.8.
Well, I think probably a best practice would be to table this with them knowing what you're gonna take out, because they'll need to go in and amend their budget to reflect what it is you're wanting, and they probably are better suited to amend each line item than the court is, knowing where they might can make some cuts, because what Bobby's saying is, if they have a budget of $6 million and they're only projected to have $5 million, you can't pass a budget that's in a deficit. So you have to give them the $6 million if that's in the budget. Does that make sense? So they would have to amend their budget to reflect what it is, whatever it is that you were wanting, and it may be easier to do it that way than to try to do it on the front end, because nonetheless, before you pass their budget, they're gonna have to come back in with a new updated budget with those line items for you to actually pass it.
All right, we have an amendment on the floor and we have a second. And we will vote on the amendment to,
so I would need to postpone is what I'm hearing instead. So I move to postpone to the meeting on the 13th.
You need to withdraw your motion,
So I'll withdraw my motion.
withdraw your second.
Withdraw my second.
all right,
Now, move to postpone.
Move to postpone to the 13th meeting, to adjust the budget down by 1.5 million.
I'll second. May I speak to that?
yes.
I just want to say, I appreciate you guys very much.
Is this
I
debatable?
appreciate you.
Yes, it's debatable.
To
I
move to a
appreciate-
certain date?
Do what?
To move to a certain date certain, which my understanding
To
is that's,
postpone to a certain time is debatable, yes.
I thought it was, if it was, can you cite the rule? Because my understanding is if it's to move to a date certain, it's not debatable. If it's postponed indefinitely, it's debatable.
To postpone to a certain time or postpone indefinitely, both are debatable. Yes, I will, give me a second, I'll give you the ruling on that.
Great.
Okay, just a minute, let's get this taken care of.
Do you want to?
Under the new Robert's Rules, you'll find it in chapter 14. And it's 14, just section 14, chapter 14, 14.1. We'll talk about it.
Okay, J.P. Pond,
I'll make it.
Did I have
did you have a
I
feeling?
think
Oh,
I was,
I'm sorry. Okay, excuse me, J.P. Pond, J.P. Deacons has the floor.
and all I'm trying to say is, you know, this budget, I appreciate you guys working with us very much. I think we start shooting ourselves in the foot with this narrative of, oh, there's us against them, and we don't trust Sheriff Hilder. All that's just nonsense. I have a lot of respect for you guys, and I have utmost respect for Sheriff Hilder. This is just us. Let's do something different. We've been doing this for years of the same stuff over and over again. Let's do something different. And I'm excited to do something different and try to help the whole county out of the hole and help the detention officers and that whole situation in the jail. I'm very excited about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, J.P. Pond.
I'm not gonna begin to tell you that we just need to keep doing it that way because that's the way it's always been done. But I will say that I appreciate these gentlemen here and the sheriff for undertaking and being responsible for all those individuals working down there at that jail and the individuals incarcerated there that they have no choice. They don't just open the door and go home. And, we can't just say, let's do something different without recognizing that there could possibly be unintended consequences. And we don't know what some of those consequences might be, considering the thing that was mentioned about the changing of the guard. I've seen things happen when we've had a changing of the guard, and they were not always positive. The new guard comes in, they don't feel any responsibility for any of the things that the court did before them. That's what this court's doing right now, as a matter of fact. So I'll not be voting for your amendment. I appreciate your trying to do something different and you're trying to help. But I'm recognizing that there are unintended consequences, and I got a lot of respect for what these individuals are doing. Thank you.
Mr. Lester, I have a question for you. We have a motion to postpone, and a second. Now, do we vote on, we need to vote on that, right?
That's correct.
So there may not, okay. So, Mr. Johnson, or J.P. Johnson, what was your question?
My comment says, I appreciate you guys, and I know it's a tough job. And for 50 years, I've been dealing with budgets, and what I know is the closer the budget is to reality, the better we perform, every time. And if we get a budget that's got too much growth in it, we don't do as well.
Okay.
So I think the closer we can get to reality, the better job we can all do.
Public comment.
No public
No
comment.
public comment on a motion to postpone. All right, we have a motion to postpone to the 13th. Miss Patty, will you call the roll, please?
Lisa Ecke,
No?
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
No.
Andrea Jenkins,
You're muted.
Andrea Jenkins,
I'm sorry, no.
Suki Hires,
No.
Sue Madison,
No.
Willie Lemming,
Let's say no.
Butch Pond,
No.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Deacons.
Yes.
I have 5 for, and 7 against.
Okay, so, the motion to postpone has failed.
We're back to the main
And we're
motion.
now back to the main motion to pass the budget for the sheriff's department. All right. Public comment.
Bobby Hill.
Bobby Hill.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just on the, I was trying to get in before this, but I'd like to see that amount raised if it's decided to cut the budget some. Because I remember about 3 years ago in February, they came up where we had to transfer 400 and something thousand to jail from general. So that might be cutting it a little close. I'm not sure. That was just something I wanted to throw out there that sometimes it is needed early in the year. And when it runs out, I can't pay their bills by law. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Okay, I think the motion is to pass the budget as presented. Okay,
Beth Coder?
who?
Beth Coder.
Beth Coler.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that the audio tonight has been really bad, and I have not been able to hear everything that was said. I don't know if people aren't using their microphone, but anyway, so I'm going to speak about something, but if you've already covered this, well then, that's why I couldn't present it. First of all, I want to urge the whole Corn Court to seriously fund what we need, the appropriate amount for the recommendations of the Criminal Justice Assessment Study, specifically the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee. And it needs to be formed in guidance with the National Institute of Correction guidelines. And I want to also speak to the pretrial services that I think it was Sheriff Helder mentioned pretrial services. That includes a lot more than ankle bracelet. The study suggested several things that we could do. Let me see. Drug, mental health, veterans, domestic violence, help with treatment for young adult, community homelessness, all kinds of things, a lot more than just ankle monitors. So let's please keep that in mind as we move forward. And there was one other thing, which I can't remember right now. So that's all. Thank you very much.
All right, is there any more public comment? All right, Miss Patty, will you call the roll? Let's make sure what everybody,
We got some questions.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment?
yes,
To the public or
yes.
from our table? I want to try to explain with Bobby on the phone with us how, I know we think that our budget was $1.2 million too much because we didn't spend that. I promise you, we spent most of it, but Mr. J.P. Deacons said the increased revenue didn't matter, but it does matter because Bobby uses that increased revenue to help pay our bills before he dips into general. He uses that money that we don't use on salaries to pay our bills before we dip into general. So all that money, the extra money that comes in, the money we don't spend on salaries goes into that jail fund, and Bobby uses that to pay our bills as they come in. So between those extra revenue coming in and the money that we didn't spend on salaries or whatever, he's able to use that money. I hope I'm telling this right, Bobby. He's able to use that money before he has to dip into the general fund. And if the general fund isn't used, it stays in the general fund for confusion. It doesn't go to the jail fund just because we designated it for that. As I understand it, if it's not used, it just lays back into the general fund. Is that correct, Bobby?
He's not on.
Oh, that's correct.
That's the way I understand it, that, so we can look back if we need to and tell you exactly what we spent in 2019 versus what we had budgeted. It'll be pretty close. There won't be 1.5 million less that we spent over what was allotted to us. We just have these other sources that money is used to fill in those gaps without having to get into the general fund money. So because we didn't spend 1.2 million in general, doesn't mean we didn't use that money to operate the jail. It means that there were revenues from other sources that fill in some of those gaps. So I just want to make sure that we're clear how that whole process works.
Randall?
And just to add on what the chief said, we're usually 200,000, 150, 200,000 is all left in our budget. And also our prisoner care, that goes up when we hold these people. And like you say, that's what Bobby helps pay the bills out of. When it's all said and done, it's somewhere 150 to 250,000 is all that's left.
Okay. Mr. Yates?
Okay, I'll make the comment as a citizen, because it appears that's the only avenue we're going to get here. But if the time comes when anybody has an interest, we've got budget justifications and explanations on the jail, the work release, and the jail maintenance budget. If anybody wants them, let me know. I'll be happy to provide them.
Thank you. All right. Any no other comments? We are voting on the jail budget as presented. All right, Ms. Patty, call the roll.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
Sam Duncan,
No.
Chandra Washington,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins,
Yes.
Suki Hires,
Yes.
Sue Madison,
Yes.
Willie Lemming,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
No.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Deacons,
No.
I have 9 for and 3 against.
All right, so the budget has passed and, will be added to those other budgets that, are in the packet. All right, thank you, gentlemen. All right, we're ready for the road department.
Chairman Harbison, can you hear me?
Yes.
JP Jenkins, can you hear me? I want to make sure everyone can hear. Yes, okay. Again, I just wanted to, again, appreciate the comments that we started with, which was on the employees. I think that was good and robust and necessary. Clearly, just like the jail with all their employees, we have the second largest group with our road department. And again, having that discussion about the work that they do. And even during the COVID, we continue to work through the county, working on roads and bridges. And so here's where we are. We are showing a flat budget to what we did last year. The year before, we were probably at 0.3% decrease. And the year before that, we're probably running at about almost 2% decrease. So running relatively lean and down year after year. If you go and look at some of the lines in our asphalt, in 2018, we were about 900,000. We went up to 1 million, and now we're down to 85,000. If you guys recall what happened in 17, 18, we had the big April floods, a lot of damage to roads and bridges. And so therefore, projections, state support, there was a lot of asphalt that we needed that came in. And so that was the increase in 19, but obviously we're down now in 20, and we're looking at 2021 also being down our asphalt. A lot of that is because the state aid programs have jumped in and also participate in helping us build some of those roads. We'll continue to apply for those as the year progresses, as we have other road projects that we want to get to. And there, one of the big issues that we see now is the half-cent sales tax that will be on the ballot. That will sunset after 10 years. I think Bobby Hill talked about that. That will sunset in 2023. It'll be on the ballot this year to continue that, but the half-cent sales tax has been, again, what has allowed us to continue to do some of the enhancements and improvements on our roads and our bridges around the county. Further down in our utilities, looks like we're down in our utilities. A lot of that due to the solar being put in. I know we had a conversation or a question about update on Johnson Controls. We'll get that out to you guys. And next year, we'll obviously be able to see, because we'll have Johnson Controls and the solar project in place over a year. And so next year, we'll be able to say what was going on when we got it started to what we have a year later, and we can do some real comparisons. But right now, our anticipated utilities will be down about 5,000 just because of some of the solar work that's going on. So again, at the end, you see that we were at about 8.6 for 2020. We're asking again for 8.6 for the 2021 budget. Looking at our salaries, we have about 87 employees, but we always, again, running behind. We're probably 6 or 7 not filled. So again, those become dollars that goes back into the general, gets swept back in. But even with that, we have some people who are retiring, who have shifted and moved on after so many years. And so we'll be even down in some of our salaries just because, again, replacing and bringing on new people, they start at that very low level at the HEO position, in which we're spending a lot of time working with HR in hopes that, again, one, some of the information that Blair Johansson has shared, and he's been working with us as well. How do we start maybe tiering our entry level roles so everyone is not coming in at that very entry level, as a CDL or non-CDL, they're still getting paid the same. So that is some of the work that we have coming in the 2021 year, working through our varying positions and varying steps, if you will, or pay rates for those employees as they come on board. The half-cent sales, again, if you look at page 139, that's our half-cent sales. We are right at 99% of spending that. We, again, get that projection from Treasury Hill, and we only spend whatever he projects that we will spend. And again, that's a projection that he puts out there. And next year, he's suggesting that we'll probably get that same 1.7. Again, these are building roads and working through and improving on bridge projects that we have. Whatever is not used obviously goes into the unappropriated road reserve. And again, those will be relatively stout, but we have those in obviously in case of an emergency like we did, we had in the April floods of 2017, where you take out a bridge, that's $1 million just to go ahead and demolish a bridge and start to put it together. And to wait on FEMA, we will get some of that money reimbursed back from FEMA, but it will be a year to almost 2 years before you get any of that back. So having that money sit in reserves allows us to go ahead and work through any major road, major bridge destruction, catastrophe, what have you. The last item on the road budget is the page 140, which is a new tax that came on, I think it was passed last year, which was the fuel tax, 3% on regular gas and 6 cents on the diesel fuel. So you only see a couple of years. It was projected about 400,000 and for this year. And again, Bobby is looking at about another 400,000 for next year. Right now, we've only used that for keeping up with our leased trucks, fueling and keeping the fuel in that as we again continue to take care of roads. We got a state line road that we're working on. That'll be about 4 miles. And so that's what that particular bucket is used for. A lot of work has gone on. I think normally we're running anywhere from 20 to 25 miles of asphalt. I think we almost hit 32. Chip and seal, we hit about 32 miles, which is pretty substantial. We've got a big project with the Wallen Mountain, obviously, and Trace Branch Road, which again, half-cent sale helped us on that particular project. We are probably going to be doing some kind of op-ed to talk about the half-cent sales tax and what the impact would be. Clearly, it would be a big impact on a number of the cities around the county, as well as probably a $5.5 million hit to the cities as well as to the county. Us directly would be at about a $1.6 million hit. Tremendous hit to the county if we don't have that. Again, we can do some maintenance, but as far as doing some improvements, that would be a big, tremendous loss if we don't have that. So anyway, that is what we have in our road budget. So I, again, appreciate it, do pass for our road budget. Any questions?
Okay, Mr. Lester, who do you have?
JP Eva Madison.
All right, JP Eva Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think this is an interesting discussion to have about the road department on the heels of the discussion we just had about the jail. The rationale for leaving almost $1 million in reserves is because we might need it if a bridge washes out and FEMA won't pay us back till later. I'm pretty sure that that money could also sit in general fund unappropriated reserves, and we could strive for a county road department budget that matches expenditures. So I don't, every department has uncertainties. We couldn't have budgeted for a pandemic. But I think that to say that a department that gets $12 million to sit with $1 million in reserves, because a bridge might go out and we might have to wait on FEMA, that's exactly why we have reserves. that we could use for any purpose. And I'll also say very disappointingly, I'm not giving $12 million to a department that won't give the quorum court any idea of what their plans are for the year. It's great to hear that X hundreds of thousands of dollars are going to asphalt and X hundreds of thousands of dollars are going to chip and seal, but which roads will be addressed next year? That's what our county citizens want to hear. I understand that the way legislative audit makes us budget by these weird line items isn't conducive to that. But before I approve a $12 million budget, I want to know what's on the plan for next year. I want to know what areas of the county are getting attention, because that's a lot of money. I'll also say that the report we received from the judge on what's going on in Winslow was less than satisfying. It did not speak to the work that was going on outside of the permitted area. It did not speak to the construction of a lake that every rumor going around town or around the county is that the Reed family really wanted a lake. So we just did what we could to give them a lake. Any department that has that kind of money does not deserve $12 million, no questions asked. And Judge Wood, I will ask you right now, will you allow Chair Jenkins to call a meeting of the County Services Committee? And will you make your people available to answer questions of that committee in the next 2 weeks? Because we need those answers. We have citations from DEQ, and that's embarrassing for the county. It's embarrassing for a $12
Point
million.
of order, it's not germane to the order, please.
Lisa, you're out of order here.
No,
Don't order. I will.
okay, go ahead.
So
All right.
I will not be supporting this budget without a clear plan on what the plan is for next year. $12 million needs an explanation, especially when they're taking 40% of our general revenue sales tax, period.
Okay.
Judge Wood, will you have the
JP Pond.
Judge Wood, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am. And again, we will, I think I responded yesterday, I can't remember, that we will have a county services meeting November 6th.
Okay, thank you. And I certainly appreciate your report, and I'm very glad to understand, not to confuse this with the ongoing budget process, that there will be an evaluation of pay for our HEOs here in the county. Just happened to run across 3 or 4 of them in the last couple of weeks. One of which will be leaving, unfortunately, one of our best. And 2021, evaluating those positions and maybe upgrading them some so they have the county has a competitive pay for ATOs. That sounds very promising to me. I also want to add, I might have been visiting with a couple of those ATOs out at that dirt pit today, and as far as I can see looking it over, I found a retention pond out there that you have got to have. It's required by ADEQ. I appreciate that you have it. Didn't see any lake, but maybe if somebody take me a tour and show me where the lake is, I'll bring my fishing pole. I think all you're gonna have there by the time you get through mining that area, looking like maybe that corner of the county will have some dirt to apply to their roads for the next 10 years. And I appreciate that.
Oh, okay.
They have not had the attention in that corner of the county that they should have, and I'm gonna thank you on the behalf of those folks living in that area. That's part of Washington County too.
All right, JP.
I appreciate it, thank you.
JP Jenkins?
Madam Chair. I just wanted to have it on the record that I had requested a county services meeting for this month over a week and a half ago. I emailed a couple times and I got a response today, but unfortunately, looks like we can't do it till November. Judge, you said November 6th. That's a Friday. Did you misspeak?
Yes, I did. That was November 2nd. I'm sorry.
2nd. Okay, November 2nd. All right. Thank you.
Are you finished? JP Sue Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have been very frustrated over this issue, as everyone knows. At the last meeting, I asked for county services to have a meeting to address this issue down at the Winslow Dirt Pit.
Okay, let's stick to
Jenkins did not do that. Chairman, I am talking. There are road department issues.
I am saying we need to stay on task and discuss the road budget. These other issues need to be discussed at the county service committee meetings. All right. All right. Is there, okay. Road budget discussions.
JP Sue Madison.
Okay, JP Sue Madison. Can't hear.
Yeah, 'cause she's muted.
You're muted, Sue.
You're unmuted.
She's still muted.
Mute me. Okay, I do resent that the people at home on Zoom can be muted and those sitting around the courtroom cannot. But nevertheless, I have been asking for a meeting on this issue about the road department. This involves the road department. It involves county employees that are perhaps being paid by the county. This is a big issue that needs to be addressed, and I will not be voting for this budget until we get some answers and everybody knows what I'm talking about.
All right, thank you.
Move
Anyone
to
else?
pass.
All right, you have, okay, I have a motion to pass the budget,
Second.
second by JP Johnson. All right, any other comments? All right, public comment. Seeing no public comment, Ms. Patty, will you call the roll, on the road budget, please?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes?
Sam Duncan,
Yes.
Shonda Washington,
Abstain.
Eva Madison,
No.
Andrea Jenkins,
No.
Suki Hires,
No.
Sue Madison,
No.
Willie Lemming,
No.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Susan Cunningham,
Yes.
Derek Thomas, Judith Yanez, Patrick Deacons.
No.
Yes.
5 for, and 6 against, and 1 abstain.
All right, so the budget does not pass. All right, okay.
Where's the public comment period?
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
They get the motion.
What?
I was curious if since we're gonna meet next week,
Who's speaking?
it's
Eva?
Eva Madison. Yeah, I was just
Yes.
curious if
Okay, Eva.
since we're gonna meet next week, and talk about raises, could we also talk about the criminal justice report?
Yes, we can put that on the agenda.
I think it'd be good for us to be able to talk about, I mean, I realize we may not be able to make decisions on everything, but I think we need to include it in our discussions for the next budget year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'll put it on the agenda.
What are
Okay,
you budgeting?
JP Washington?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if it's just my connection, but it appears to be a lot of background noise tonight that's making it pretty difficult to hear what's being said from those who are in the courtroom and those who were presenting. I feel like I missed a lot of the conversation because it sounds like rustling papers and I'm not sure what else, but there is a lot of background noise, much more than usual tonight. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
hear a
I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
Public comment, you've got a.
Oh, public comment,
Second.
Public comment.
public comment.
Done.
I withdraw my second.
We have a motion to adjourn by Lemming, second by Sue Madison.
I withdraw my second.
I'll second.
All right, Butch is seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Motion carries.
Yeah.
Hmm.